Hello and welcome to the post-draft podcast of the Boys of Summer League. It is the most wonderful time of the year. It is the draft time. However, we have concluded that draft. We are 4 days from opening day, and Eric and I just had to hop on and talk about it. Eric, welcome. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good, man. The day we've been waiting for is now over. The draft is officially done, and it's time to share our probably wrong, maybe some right opinions on how last night went and how it all shook up together. It was a fun one, no doubt
I
about
think
it.
we're usually right about most things. I think we're very rarely ever wrong about really much anything. Uh,
Never, right?
so
No.
that's why I think these podcasts are so important, is because we have Nostradamus 1, Nostradamus 2 over here, just spitting facts and predicting the future on what's about to happen. We had a division draft today, and we have a lot of fun stuff to talk about. So let's dive into our draft first and foremost. But there's one thing that has to be addressed before the draft. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the commission's apology. My sincerest apologies for how yesterday went. I know it wasn't the first time that we had some technical difficulties with our draft. And Eric, I appreciate you doing what you could to kind of
Oh, no problem.
get us piece by piece back online the longest way that we possibly could. I honestly still to this day have no idea what was going on with the mixed up draft picks. And even with the auction, I don't know what was going on because I had the auction set a maximum roster of 18 and it was letting people draft 19 and 20 and 21. And so I don't know what was going on there. I'm gonna have to dive deeper into the settings when I'm not on a bus here. And then yeah, the reserve draft order. I have no idea what was going on there, but I'm glad we were able to get it sorted out in a not so timely manner. But
It's
it's
not an
still,
auction draft without something happening, right?
yeah, last year was smooth. It
It
was the
did.
year
Yeah.
before that fucked it all up. I thought it would just be the same as last year, but I guess not. But I guess that's what happens when you're drafting in Central Illinois on a goddamn bus. But anyway, let's get into the draft now. Eric, what surprised you most about the draft last night?
I'm gonna be honest. It kind of went for the most part how I expected it. I know we're going to dive into some of the numbers here and there in terms of this or that, but I can't really point to like one thing that I was like, wow, I just really wasn't expecting that. I knew the closers were going to be a premium. I wasn't sure how much of a premium they were. And I think there's a few of us that ended up out of the draft kind of just being priced out of closers because we just didn't feel like it was worth that price. So
Yeah.
maybe that a little bit because all I heard was how many closers there were, but there weren't. There really weren't that many closers. So I can't really say I'm shocked by anything. A lot of the top guys kind of went for what I thought they would go for, and weirdly enough, for an auction draft, I kind of felt like it went about as expected.
I thought the prices on some guys would be higher. I mean, there was some overspends. I mean, like Logan Webb for 37, but I mean, he's, the best pitcher that was available. I mean, Luis Garcia for 23, Kyle Wright for 20, Pasquantino for 25. I thought these were slight overpays, but it's not anything that surprised me given the money that was out there and the kind of situation that a lot of guys were in. I mean, a lot of guys had a lot of money and not enough roster spots for that money. And so they just overpaid for their guys. I mean, we saw Felix Bautista go for 27 because Tyler had the money, he had to spend it. And yeah, it didn't really catch me off guard. What actually surprised me was kind of the value that was still had in the mid tier. I think kind of late towards the draft. I think it kind of creeps up on us every year where you're kind of looking at the end and going, wow, that guy went for this, Justin Turner for 1. Rowdy Tellez for 6, and kind of some of those values that were had late, especially those $1 guys that got scooped up by Jay and some of the others towards the end. That's kind of the money place to be sometimes, where you can really find some of those good $1 values for the next 3 years. Those kind of always catch me off guard, and I don't know why I'm never prepared for that, and why I always never spend enough money in the auction to get to that point. But yeah, that was kind of something that I kind of took
Well,
away from it.
and
Um,
that's why I feel like, and I kind of said it last week. I'm like, you got to go out and get your $30, $35 guy right away because if you don't get that guy and those 6, 7, 8 guys are gone, then it does become middling where you have the money, but again, like you said, you don't really want to pay that price for guys that you feel are more like $7, $8 players rather than $15 or $20 players. And I think those guys were going quick, and then yeah, I mean, it definitely made a difference. It was definitely interesting to see some strategies like Phil, for example. I think every single closer that got put up, you could tell Phil really wanted a closer
yeah,
because he was in on every closer. So you could start to see some trends.
Mhm.
here and there. But overall, yeah, kind of for the most part, win as expected, I would say.
Yeah, and there was some guys that had some questionable strategies, and I'd like to talk about one really quick, which was my good pal Jordan. Unfortunately for Jordan, he refused to read the Constitution, so he did not understand the rules going into it, and so he was under the impression that he was drafting about 16 guys, spending his money willy nilly, and didn't leave any roster spots open for the guys that he actually needed most. We'll kind of talk about that in a little bit, but he was kind of hoping to get in on the Walker Buellers and the Trevor Stories at the end, but he decided to spend his money on Luis Garcia and some other guys, and so he kind of messed himself up there a little bit. So the newbie unfortunately is going to have to learn the hard way. He's going to have to take his lumps this year. If we're not reading the fine print on that one. Yeah, and then some other guys that I thought took some weird directions. I mentioned it in the chat where we had our top guys build towards the future with some of their draft picks, didn't round out the roster with serviceable players. We had middle tier guys that were drafting veterans to try and bolster up to bulk up for the year. And then we kind of had Bryce kind of going in both directions, drafting some guys, drafting some future guys, picking up Edwin Diaz, who might not be on a mound this year. And, it was kind of like a choose your path draft. And with all that being said, I didn't think any of our top teams got better. And I thought a lot of the teams out of the mid tier really closed that gap from the top tier. And we kind of had that hierarchy that I talked about pre-draft, where we had that top three. I think that hierarchy is gone, and I think that those top three, me, Peter, and Phil, did not do a very good job of really separating ourselves and kind of controlling the league the way that we're used to controlling it. And I think that we're going to see a lot more guys kind of creep into the top of the roto rankings throughout the years. Is that what you see as well?
Yeah, I mean, I still think the top 4 or 5 teams are the top 4 or 5 teams for the most part. I just don't think there was enough talent in this draft. No one was out there really getting outside of Dave, the new, or sorry, Jordan. I keep saying Dave. Outside of the new Jordan, who could go out there and spend all those money on all those guys. He kind of cleaned up a lot of those top tier guys where yes, I do think some gaps were closed, but overall, there just wasn't enough guys to jump 3 or 4 teams in the power rankings. So I do think it's tighter from 9 to 6, 9 to 5 in the power rankings, but I do think there still is a separation.
Yeah. So what our plan is that we're gonna do kind of a team by team breakdown of kind of what's going on. We're gonna still do our reverse power rankings. We're gonna give each team a draft grade. And then we're going to as we normally do, we'll kind of wrap it all up in the end and kind of go through there. But before we get to that, there's two things we need to get to. My first question is, who do you think won the draft?
I kind of teetered back and forth with this. And again, the obvious answer to say is the guy that had the most money had the most to spend. But who I think really kind of like made the most improvement or jumped and did what they needed to do to make themselves competitive, I think was Chad. I think Chad went in there. There was a couple things that I think was a little, like you said, maybe a little bit of an overpay, maybe a little bit of a question here and there. But he went in there and got really the top closer, the top third baseman, one of the top starters for cheap. He got Giolito a little bit cheaper than he had Logan Webb for, so he threw Logan Webb back, got Giolito back even cheaper. I just really like a lot of the moves he made. Jose Abreu he got for 17, and I know Pasquanito's got the whole prospect rookie vibe where his ceiling you could argue is higher, but how do you spend 25 on kind of an unproven guy and Jose Abreu hitting in the middle of the Astros lineup? Chad gets later for 17. Like I
Yeah.
think Chad hit a home run in this draft, dude.
Yeah, I do like the moves that Chad made. I liked what he did in the auction. I did not care what he did for in the reserve draft though, and we'll kind of talk about that and how his kind of roster rounded out. But to me, I think top to bottom, who had the best night was very clearly Justin. I really liked a lot of the values that he got. I think his timing was incredible. He got his closers at just the right time, right before like at really good prices when he got Iglesias. And when he got Daniel Bard, he got Daniel Bard for 9, Iglesias for 16. When we saw Felix Bautista go at the wrong time and had to spend 27 for him, I bid 26 for him and didn't get him for 26. So my timing was bad when it came to that. I really wanted Bautista. He wasn't the first one off the board, so we didn't spend 20 on Devin Williams. And he kind of really was able to fill out his roster with kind of some serviceable guys. Rowdy Tellez for 6. I thought that was a really good value. Conforto for 1. We'll kind of see what he gets there. Max Muncy for 13. Max Muncy might even be probably the best offense if you ignore stolen bases, which there's a lot of speed in this draft, so you can't. But when in regards to offensive production, Max Muncy might be the best home run RBI on base percentage guy that might be drafted in the entire draft this year. I mean, yeah, they're gonna have their first baseman, but you wouldn't surprise me if Max Muncy outproduces Christian Walker and Pasquantino and some of those guys. So I kind of like the way he kind of rounded out his roster. His rotation looks good. His roster looks pretty decent top to bottom, and you're going to see a little bit of a leap from him in the power rankings here later in the draft. Who do you think had the worst night last night?
Uh, Again, it's tough because everyone's got different money. But if I had to just pinpoint a team where I just scratched my head at a lot of decisions, I mean, I'm just gonna say it. I think it's Dave's team. I think a lot of those decisions were just they didn't make sense to me with what he was going at. I know he argues that Cabrian Hayes was the second best third baseman. Okay, whatever. I don't mind the Cal Wright for 20. I don't even think the Mullins for 31 is bad, but I still think 20 for Yelich is getting to the point where that's too much of an overpay. Again, I don't even hate the Chris Bryant for 14,
Yeah.
but 9 for Bednar, 4 for Torkelson. Again, he rounded out his team. It's just one of those things where I think he needed more stars, and I just feel like he got a lot of
Well, we know
just
there weren't stars available, and he
there was.
got a lot of them that were available.
I don't think so.
Well, you said
You
he
think
got, he got top 5 out of the top 15 or something, right?
no the I keep no I mean Dave Long had the worst draft.
Yeah.
I no I think Dave or
Oh,
the new
you were talking about Jordan.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Jordan. Yeah, I think Jordan got 5 out of the top 15 guys. So I don't think it's like overwhelming worst draft because again, you look at a guy like Jay who had $15, and I think he did a pretty good job with those $15. But in terms of having the money, what they had to do with it, I would say probably Dave, or I would even argue Phil. I was not a fan of Phil's draft.
Interesting. Interesting. But the thing with Dave's team is I kind of still agree that Dave's team does have upside, though. I mean, you can't ignore what these guys have done in the last several years. I mean, there's still a scenario where Christian Yelich kind of regains his form. He's proven he can. Cedric Mullins is solid. Austin Meadows is still young and solid. Obviously, O'Neal Cruz has ceiling. Ketel Marte, if you went back to what he was a couple of years ago, has ceiling. So I can't say that this team doesn't have a chance, but I also agree that he didn't have the best of nights. He could have probably spent his money in a better form. But I'm going to talk about a little bit more about Dave's team here in a little bit. I'm going to kind of go surprise some people here, and maybe not, but I think who had the worst night, honestly, was actually Peter. Peter, not that he had a lot of money to spend because he didn't, but I thought his overall roster build and what his goal should have been coming out of the draft, he kind of completely forwent that idea. I mean, he was going in as like the top team. All he had to do was just kind of not screw it up, and I think he might have screwed it up. All he had to do was kind of just get some solid contributors around the edges to kind of help his team. He was already the best team in the league. So all he had to do was just get contributing guys at all the different positions. And he had enough money to do that. I mean, he didn't have loads of money, but he had about $20 to kind of spend to fill some of those holes on offense. But he got a guy, Luis Arias, who is not a home run nor a stolen base guy, the rare actually, contributing not home run, not stolen base guy. He's not going to drive a lot of RBIs, and he's more of a batting average guy than on base percentage guy anyway. So I don't really love him in this league. Jonah Heim is one of the worst catchers in the league now. ADP 342. Yeah, he got him for $1, but he wasn't competitive any of the solid catchers. Yohan Moncada, who doesn't deserve to be in the batter's box, who I don't even know if he's going to finish the year with the White Sox. And Joey Meneses, he had a really good second half last year, but who knows once pitchers start to figure him out, what's going to kind of happen there. He drafted Rhys Hoskins to play first base, who's not going to be available for him this year. Brett Beatty, who was sent down. Lane Thomas, who's probably not going to start every day. He's probably going to platoon. And then his pitching staff, he didn't really need improvements. But then again, he went kind of the opposite route. He drafted Liam Hendriks to fill one of his pitcher spots. And who knows if he's going to pitch this year, let alone ever again. I mean, I know he wants to, but who knows if he's going to be the same pitcher he was before. That could have been a career-ending injury. So this is a guy that was primed. All he had to do was just keep the ship steady, and he led it directly into an iceberg. Now, I'm not saying that Peter's not a contender because he still very well may be one of the best offense is one of the best pitching staffs in the league, and he'll probably be there at the end. But he certainly created some holes that he didn't need to with his draft.
Yeah, I think it's if you really, I mean, the two teams you can really compare and how they went around things was Jay and Peter because they both went in with little money.
Yeah,
And again, I know we'll get into it later, but I think Jay with his money, is it's not even close to what Peter did with his
yeah,
money.
I
You know,
agree.
I don't even think it's close.
Yeah, and I think that Jay did a good job of recognizing what was available to him, and he kind of scooped up the guys at the right times in the draft and when he kind of needed to scoop him up. I mean, he's a grizzled veteran at this point. I mean, he's a
Mhm.
league champ. You know, we can't take that for granted that he kind of knows what he's doing by now.
And he sat there for a while. I think he was I think Peter yeah, Peter was the 48th pick by the time he actually got a guy. His first guy he got was Reese Hoskins. Jay waited until 44 to get Turner for $1. He didn't go again until 72. He got Cobb for 3, and then really, like I said, he just kind of sat and waited and made sure, hey, I'll just get my dollar guys. And we've known in the past he's done pretty well with his dollar guys, so
Yep.
maybe he can do it again.
Yep. All right. So before we get into our power rankings, let's do some trade reactions here. We have, I believe, one or two trades. Can't remember how many we have.
That happened in the last week or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, so we'll go to our trade screen here. First one we had was a trade involving you and Justin. We did the Whit Guerrero, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So you sent Marcus Simeon for Brian Reynolds and Carlos Correa. With this trade, I don't know if that maximizes the value of Marcus Simeon. I mean, you'd sent me a message about Simeon and asking for some pieces, and I kind of was like, nah, I don't know about that. And then the more I kind of thought about it, I was like, man, I could have used a guy like Simeon, and he probably would have fit perfectly on my team, especially given my situation with my lack of offense. And by the time I could even kind of get back to you, he was gone to Justin's team, and so. I don't really love the return because I don't think Correa was really much of a fantasy asset at his price, at his cost. What's he, 16?
Yes, I believe 16.
No,
Yep.
16 for a guy that's not going to steal bases, who, the home run numbers kind of took a dip last year. Definitely the counting stats, the home runs or the RBIs and the runs last year. And then Brian Reynolds, who solid player, solid price. He's an asset. If he hits another 27 home runs, he'll be okay. But if he stays with the Pirates and scores 72 runs with 62 RBIs and steals only 7 bases, he's only a 2 category contributor. So, I mean, those are two very imperfect players for a guy who almost is a perfect player, a 4.5 category contributor with on base percentage. So, yeah, I guess if it's 304, it's really only a 4 category. I'll probably bring you down in that stat. But I just like the price of Simeon, and I'm not sure you kind of maximize that. So I'm going to give you a C minus. I'm going to give Justin a B plus on that one.
There you go. All right.
You have anything
My
to say
thought
about
process
that?
on
Your rationale or anything?
Oh yeah, my rationale is Simeon's not going to ever hit 45 home runs again. He did that in Toronto on the juiced year. I don't know if he ever hits 30 again in Texas
Yeah.
because of that stadium. He's also 32
He had
years old,
33 in
and his
Oakland.
steals last year, yeah, 4 year another 2019. What we were still using the juice ball back then?
Yeah.
Like that's what he had. Um, my thing is this: he stole 25 bases last year, and I remember halfway through the season, you even saying that's an outlier. He's never done that before.
Yeah.
Now he's 32 years old. So does he? I mean, I would love for him or whatever to steal 25, 30 bases again and prove that he was a good player and he can do that. But he's only stolen 15 bases in his career one other time.
Mm-hmm.
He hits 26 home runs. Reynolds and Correa do that. Okay, he gets 80. He gets 80 to 90 RBIs. Or he had 83 last year. Reynolds and Correa both do that. They did that last year.
Reynolds
And
only what,
Reynolds,
64 RBIs?
I might be looking at projections here, but he might have had 64. Um, but Reynolds and Correa pretty much do that, and they have much better OBPs. We're talking 50, 60 points higher than Simeon. So literally the only category, and Simeon might score 15 more runs than a Correa or a Reynolds, but my thing is honestly the only thing I'm really missing out with Simeon is the steals, which I think I've made up with the Bobby Witt move.
Yeah.
So I felt like I got two like core solid bats, not as high as Simeon in terms of everything they can do, but I think I replaced the home runs, I think I replaced the RBIs, I upgraded it on base percentage, and I felt like it even added more depth to my offense.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that makes sense in a way. So let's move on to the next one, and I'll let you take the lead on this one. Jose Altuve and Alejandro Kirk for Andres Jimenez. What did you kind of make of this deal for Jordan here?
It didn't make too much sense to me. I think this is kind of a comeback to it one because obviously Jordan's already talked about, if I do trade Altuve, I want it to be the right value, this and that. Um, the thing is, and he might be getting horrible offers. Maybe I was one of them that sent one of them. I don't know. But if you wait 2 months on a C contract Altuve, no one's going to give you an A keeper in June. I just don't really see it happening, especially heading into next year when people might only keep 6 or 7 guys. If you have a dynamite keeper that you think's golden, that's an A contract in June, you're not giving him up for 2 months of Jose Altuve. So I'm curious to see what he ends up doing with him, but I don't think it was a good move because there's no rationale, I don't think at all, that can tell me that Kirk is a higher value $1 player than Jimenez. And that's basically what it boils down to. So this is kind of a comeback to it later. What does Dave end up doing with Altuve? And then maybe I don't have to beat him down so bad for this one.
Yeah, I actually disagree with you on that. I think that Altuve, when healthy, Altuve was going in like the late second, early third round, of ADP. So it
Well,
puts
no,
him
well, yeah, nobody's debating he's a bad player, but he's out for
yeah,
2 months,
but yeah,
dude.
no, but that's what I'm saying. I'm saying he's a top 30 player when healthy, right? So why wouldn't people give up a fantasy asset, especially with how thin second base is? There's going to be contenders out there that are going to be my second baseman is Nico Horner and he's not getting it done, and I need to upgrade it at second base, and Altuve is going to be sitting right there, and I think that people are going to give up assets for him. I mean, he's already has people in his inbox asking him for Jose Altuve, looking to kind of buy him already as he's been hurt. And I don't think that the contract matters. And to me, I feel like he'll get more for trading Altuve in 2 months than he would have gotten by trading Jimenez, because I don't think that Jimenez is the player that Altuve is.
Ooh.
And if somebody's going to be going to win a championship, Altuve is more helpful to winning a championship than Jimenez is.
I agree, but my point is, if like I'm saying, if we're in June and there's a pros like you have an A contract that you like that you're looking at as a keeper next year,
Yeah,
clearly they're doing something good. So are you really going to trade a player that's contributing to your team that's already good for Altuve to only have him as a C contract and he's gone anyway? Like Andre Jimenez could be putting up pretty good numbers 2 months from now, and I don't know. Like I said, it all depends what he turns Altuve into because
yeah.
again, Jimenez is a better fantasy player without a doubt than Kirk. I mean, he just does more things.
Correct.
So,
Yeah, but that's not
uh,
the trade. That the trade is Altuve,
like I,
and it's trading it into the cap space that he didn't even spend anyway, because he wasn't going to spend $200 in that draft anyway. So he's like, well, let me just take on the larger salary for the better player who I can flip for more assets than I would be able to flip for Jimenez. And meanwhile, I'll just take on Alejandro Kirk at $1 and see what he can do in Toronto's lineup and see if he can replicate and grow off of what he did last year as a 24-year-old catcher.
yeah, I
So
mean,
I
like I said, we'll see what he turns Altuve into because
kind of an
he's looking
incomplete.
complete. He's looking completely at next year, right? So
Yes,
Altuve, I don't want to say means nothing to him, but it literally, it's completely a trade ship. So it's really
yes,
hard to judge this trade until I see what he does with it.
correct.
Like I said, if we come back 3 months from now and he turns it into, an A plus keeper for next year, boom, yeah, good job, dude. But if he turns it into a guy where you might not even keep next year, then no, that was dumb. You might as well have just kept Jimenez.
Yes, because Jimenez will still very likely be a keeper at $6 next year.
Oh yeah, I agree, 100%.
All right, so let's drive into our power rankings. We'll start from
Ooh, let's
14
do it.
and work our way up. So a lot of exciting things to talk about. We have a standalone 14th place finisher, and at 14th place in our power rankings actually isn't the guy that went in with $200 and close to no talent on his roster. It's actually going to Bryce Schmidt. Team Beantown Boys is coming in at number 14 in the power rankings. Bryce did not really do a good job spending his money. He kept some overpriced players, so he didn't have the kind of money that Jordan had. And the money that he did have was not really allocated well to address the needs of his team. His pitching staff isn't really that great. His offense has some highlights in it, but it's really bad outside Ronald Acuna. And I think that the pitching staff might be a little sneaky in ERA and WHIP, but other than that, I think that's like really the only kind of upside that I can see on this team.
Yeah, I mean, when I did my like pre-draft rankings and I was looking at the top 30, 50, 100 players, I kind of did throw needs next to them, and that's kind of how I'm doing. Like, how well did you do in your draft based on the needs I thought you had for your team? For Bryce's needs, I had saves, which he obviously got Helsley, so all right, we'll check that one off. Um, then I had RBIs and Ks, strikeouts. I think Morton's obviously a high K guy. I would still I know you might talk about his second half of the season again. 15 based on what pitchers are in there, I don't hate it, but that could come back to haunt him. We'll see. I
Mm.
don't think he has many pitchers at all in his rotation, especially with Kershaw not playing. I mean, Morton is literally at 40 years old, his best strikeout pitcher. So I
Yeah.
don't really think he totally justified that need yet. I don't think he totally filled that need. And I also put RBIs as a need. How many of those guys, literally, I mean, think about this. How many of those guys are actually hitting in the middle of their order? Um,
Not many. Albies might hit like sixth if you include
yeah,
that as being in the
I
middle
would
of the
say
order.
Mountcastle maybe.
Perez will.
Perez and Acuna probably hits three. There's three guys in his lineup that actually hit in the middle of the order. He has two guys projected for 80 RBIs or more. He has a dude projected for 35, 57, 69 RBIs, 50. He just doesn't have enough RBIs. He doesn't have enough. I would argue steals are, but RBIs and Ks, I still think he's lacking in.
Yeah, there were some picks that he made that I liked. I like the Miguel Vargas pick. I like that he's kind of got some cheaper guys. I didn't really love the Manuel Margot pick. I not really crazy about Mountcastle and some of the keepers that he made, but I really can't criticize him about that because we already talked about that on a previous pod. And yeah, I just think that there was opportunities for him to get better, but he didn't really take them. And he kind of decided to he kind of tried to toe both lines of build towards the future, drafting Bueller and Edwin Diaz, but also kind of drafting some, having a lot of win now guys. So maybe he's just going to tear it down all year and kind of try and compete with Jordan in an arms race for 2024 and trade away Salvador Perez and Acuna and some of these other guys. And that might be an exciting thing to watch to see who can do it better. But yeah, as of right now, he just kind of doesn't really have a path to relevancy and just kind of dead in the water with it. And we'll see if he can build towards next year, if he wants to try and trade, some Walker Bueller and Edwin Diaz for guys to try and compete this year. But I don't know if I'd recommend that.
His two best picks were Bueller and Diaz. I really
Yeah.
think that. I mean, no doubt about it. I think Diaz at $10 is an absolute steal heading into next year, being a B top closer in baseball. Walker Bueller at $5. I mean, we could look at his team right now and look at all the A's. What B contracts does he have? Those will be his two best chips heading into next offseason. I
Mhm.
mean, without question, I don't see another player. All the rest looked like C contracts. So if we're talking about Bryce towards next year, again, I'm curious to see what he does with those, and maybe he doesn't trade him. Maybe you just hold on to those and go into the draft $15 off. Just keep those two guys and have a completely free board. And I think that's might be the best case scenario for Bryce.
No, I think that'd be the worst case scenario because I feel like you have to either pick a path. Either you're going to be going in this year, or you're going to trade these C guys, these Salvador Perez's, these Ozzy Albies, these Bogarts, these Acuñas, and get pieces back for future years. And if that's what you want to do, I don't know. You can go the route of I want for sure guys that are going to be cheap next year, and kind of put all your eggs in one basket, or you can be like I want as many swings of the bat as I can. I want several A and B contracts. Maybe they're not good right now, but maybe they're young enough. Maybe Krim already turns to Bryce and goes, "Hey, I'll give you the Jordan Lawler for him." And Jordan Lawler could be great. He could not even debut until the middle of next year. Who knows? So I
And,
mean,
no,
if
and
you,
I agree that he needs to make moves on those C contracts because the longer he waits, and I mean, we're both ranking him 14, right? So
yeah,
we both don't think his team is anywhere near playoff contention.
hmm
The season starts on Thursday. Every single game that is played after Thursday, Acuna loses value, Bogarts loses value, every single one of them. And I'd hate to say like give up on your season now, but they have more value now than they ever will.
yeah, I can kind of see what you're saying, but I think that there's a lot of teams. I mean, there's so many trades that go down in this league that there is always buyers willing to kind of take on these. It's just a matter of how many assets those buyers are going to have, and if those buyers run out of assets to kind of give up to you. I mean, we'll see kind of how many impact guys are actually drafted this year in the reserve draft and those cheap contracts, but some teams won't really have a lot of trade pieces unless they make moves. Maybe a guy like Phil might want a Ronald Acuna or a Clayton Kershaw, but if he's giving up some of those pieces now, he might not have them available. So yeah, if Jordan and Bryce are going to be competing in this arms race, they might have to strike while the iron's hot in some of these deals, or else teams are going to just run out of good assets to give them, and they might
Hmm.
be a race to whatever that may be. Overall, I don't think that Bryce screwed up the draft, though. I gave Bryce a C. I gave him a C just because it's unclear what the path is. I didn't know what his path was in the draft, but he got a lot of guys that I like. I love the value of, we said, Diaz, and I don't think that Charlie Morton's too bad. Who's the other? Oh, Walker Bueller, obviously great pickup there at the price. I loved his Miguel Vargas pick in the reserve draft. I thought he probably should have went in the auction. Surprised he made it all the way to the reserve draft. He would have been my pick if he fell all the way to me in the first round. Spencer Steer prospect. And so it seemed like his path was building towards the future, and he did a decent job of that, but it didn't really reflect where his roster is now. So I just, the whole uncertainty of kind of trying to play both sides of the clarinet at the same time, one might say, as no one has ever said, but trying to think of an analogy there, is kind of not really a good plan for him right now, but we'll see what it kind of turns into.
Yeah, I'm gonna give him a C as well. Like I said, I like the Bueller, I like the Diaz one. Even I know it's crazy, but Mitch Keller is the opening day starter for the Pirates, and according to someone on in this podcast right now, that is the National League Central Division
That's right.
champion's opening day starter. So who knows if even a Mitch Keller, who was a top 10 prospect just 2 years ago, maybe as a $1 guy, we'll see what that turns into. I didn't mind. I didn't mind that one either.
Yeah. All right, so we're gonna move to number 13 in our consensus power rankings, which is actually a tie for 12 and 13, and that's going to be a tie between Jordan and Dave. Both pretty predictable. I don't think there's any surprises here. Which one do you want to talk about first, Eric?
Let's do Dave.
All right, I'll let you take the lead on Dave. Is there anything that you haven't mentioned already that you'd want to talk about with Dave? With Dave's
Mm,
team?
No, like I said, when I looked at his needs heading into the draft, I would have said everything offense, right? So if we're
Mhm.
looking at how he did his offense, like we said, we talked about it. I think Mullins and Bryant were probably the best values that he got there. I don't hate those prices, but other than that, I feel like he should have took more of the superstar approach rather than the balance thing. But I understand he had to fill out an entire offense, so it really was a struggle to do that. So I don't think with the money he had, I know I said he had the worst draft. I'm fine with the way he filled it out. He filled out a roster. It's just I think there was just so many holes heading into the draft that it's hard to be like, oh, now I like the team. And that's where again he sits at 13. Was there any scenario given how his draft went where he could have jumped up to 9 or 10? I don't think so. And that's kind of where I have, and that's why I have him there.
Yeah, I had him a little bit higher than you because like I said, these pieces do have upside. It's just we don't know if they can ever get back to that upside. Cattell Marte had a really, really good year, but that was in the juice ball era that you mentioned earlier. He had 32 home runs, 92 RBIs, 10 stolen bases, and a 389 on base percentage. That was 4 years ago, though. I don't know if he can get back to that. O'Neal Cruz, we don't know what his ceiling is. Chris Bryant has been able to stay healthy, but Chris Bryant won an MVP in less than, well, when did he win his MVP? 2000, was it 16?
Yeah, 16. Yeah, I think
15 or
so. Yep.
16. Geez, that was freaking 7 years ago already. Shit.
I don't know.
And so we don't know if he's going to get back to that point, but playing in Colorado, there's a chance. Speaking of MVPs, Christian Yelich, win MVP, runner up.
Yeah, I mean, he made the same mistake last year, though. Dave spent money on Yelich and Bellinger, if you remember.
And
And
that's exactly what I was about to
yeah,
say. Is that Dave looked at this and went, my squad was pretty good last year. I'm going to run it back this year. And he drafted all the guys he had last year. I mean, the Josh Bells, the Austin Meadows, the Christian Yelich's is like of the world. Like, these are all the guys you had last year, Dave. And how did it work out for you last time? So now he's just going to run it back and be like, oh, let's take another crack at that and see if it kind of works this time. Ronzi Contreras. So it's like, and Herman Marquez, like these are guys that have been on his team for like all 3 years now. It hasn't worked for him yet. I don't anticipate it working a third time now. So a little bit of a head scratcher. I'm not going to say that Dave doesn't have a chance because he does. Like I said, he's got Tatis, who could be the best player in fantasy in a month. He's got guys that can contribute in Cedric Mullins and O'Neal Cruz and Ketel Marte and Josh Bell and Christian Yelich. And those guys can be good. Chris Bryant as well. The pitching staff might not be great, but he still has Max Scherzer, who can be the best pitcher in baseball on any given day. Hunter Green, who's going to be a high strikeout guy, and two hopeful closers in Barlow and Bednar, albeit on pretty bad teams. But bad teams can save a lot of games too because they don't typically end in blowouts. So, I mean, there is a path here, but the likelihood is pretty low, which is why we have him as low as we do. So I gave Dave a D minus just because I just didn't like the way he wanted to try and run it back this year with some of these guys. I think he needed more of a shakeup than this, and I think it's going to be an uphill battle for him.
Yeah, I'm gonna give him a D. I think his best pick, weirdly enough, I've been waiting for a couple years for a bounce back year, but Anthony Rendon is not 38 yet, and he's still hitting in that offense. And I think a
Not
$3 Anthony,
33 yet.
yeah, I think an Anthony Rendon. I'm not quite giving up on him yet. So I think that's gonna be one of the
I'm
things
not
where he just
either, especially when like he was like one of the most consistent fantasy guys for
right.
between 2016 and 2019. It was 20 home runs, 25 home runs, 24 home runs, 34 home runs. Each of those years, he had really solid RBI numbers and good on
Yeah,
base percentage.
and that's why like
412 on base percentage 2019.
oh sure, and that's why I'm saying like I know it's been a few years, but there's just part of me that just can't quite do it yet. And when I saw him go for $3 that late in the draft, I went, that's something that I think I don't want to say people slept on because it's not like he is an all-star player right now, but I'm curious to see how that one shakes out.
Yeah. So that's where we have Davey tied for 12th, 13th. The other guy tied with him is New Jordan. Now, I didn't hate his kind of draft strategy, but his execution was bad. Like I said, he kind of messed up his planning. He thought he had to draft more guys than he actually did because he didn't actually read the Constitution when it was sent to him. He didn't ask enough questions, I guess, didn't really understand what was going on. So he could have gotten a really good draft grade had he gotten the guys that he really needed to get. He needed to get Bryce Harper, Walker Bueller, and Trevor Story. Like that was the plan, and he didn't get any of those guys. Now he got guys with upside. He got Jordan Walker and Gunnar Henderson and Anthony Volpe and Vinny Pasquantino, and he's got and Corbin Carroll, and he's got Jeremy Pena. So he's got young guys with upside. He's got a lot of scratch off lottery tickets. But if it's me, I would rather have the established guys who I know are good, like Walker Bueller, like Bryce Harper, like Trevor Story, who I know for certain that they will be fantasy relevant. They will be top 50 players when they return, probably maybe top 70 players. Maybe Story's not top 50 anymore, but top 70 players when they return. And I don't know if any of those guys, I don't know if any of those guys are going to be like with their teams. I guess freaking what's Corbin Carroll, what their money he's going to be making, will probably be with the team. But I don't know if any of those guys are actually going to be any good or not. They haven't proven anything.
And here's my thing. And you mentioned his name already. Dave's number one target because he's proven and he wasn't going to go for market value was Bryce Harper. I mean that should have been
Yeah.
that. I mean, like, and
I mean, you keep
obviously,
saying Dave because you should just
oh
Jordan.
my God, Jordan. God, I don't know why I think it's another Dave. Good Lord.
Yeah.
Jordan. We need to have their like how Justin has his name next to his and Chad. We need to have
Yeah.
everyone do the parentheses and put their name next. That'd be a lot easier. Jordan. Um, I agree with Story. I agree with Bueller. I agree with Diaz. Those are guys. But Bryce Harper's another one. He spent the same price for Gunnar Henderson that he could have gotten for
That's the
Bryce
biggest
Harper.
head scratcher. When he had nothing but money, he could have paid
Yep.
40 for Bryce Harper, and it still would have been a bargain.
Yep. He could have, and Pasquanito 25. Harper went for 27. Corbin Carroll 33. Harper went. That's just what always gets back to me. My question to you is obviously we don't know what Corbin Carroll is going to be, what Volpe is going to be, what Henderson's going to be. So I do think for teams that were competing, they could pay that price like you
Mm-hmm.
and take that shot. How many of these guys legitimately, based on that price and going into next year, how many of those guys are going to be legitimately worth that price where Jordan can look at this and go, I have 4 keepers, he might get how many keepers out of those out of
Yeah,
all the money he spent.
exactly. And that's what I was telling him out. And we are kind of talking about the values. I was like, what are the odds that Corbin Carroll, like he's got all the upside, but what are the odds that he's actually a $33
Right,
player? I
exactly.
mean, so in order for him to be worth $33, he's got to hit 20 home runs and steal 30 bags. If
As
in
a
order
rookie.
he has to be better than what Cedric Mullins was 2 years ago in order to be
Yep.
worth 33. So like as a rookie, that's asking a lot of him to be worth more than that to be
Right.
even worth it. So you're asking him to steal more, hit more than 20 home runs and steal more than 30 bags. Now he has the upside to steal 50 bases this year. And if he does that, as long as he can basically be Jorge Mateo who can actually hit. But the
His
outcome in Jordan Walker being worth 21. I mean, you're asking Jordan Walker to hit 30 home runs and as a
right.
rookie to be worth
And,
that value.
and that's why I weirdly think Volpe and Walker, just because they were almost $10 cheaper, I can see a world where Volpe at that position, yes, is worth it at $18 with playing in New York in that lineup. Another 30 steal guy, Walker. But when you start reaching, and I know that's the going price. I know Henderson, I know Corbin
Mhm.
Carroll. We're going to go for that price. We said they were going to go for that price.
Because there
But
was
again,
so little talent that you had to buy the upside in hopes
right.
that it would turn into something. There wasn't
And
established talent that you could just pay for. You
and
had to
that's
buy
why I feel
it.
like exactly. And that's why I feel like it had to be teams that were contending or were trying to
Yeah.
contend to do that. Because the way I look at Jordan's team right now is I'm fine with that draft strategy. But again, I'm going to go back to what we said with Bryce earlier. I'm completely fine with that draft strategy. But since we know a lot of these guys aren't really going to be worth that price next year on the reset, now is the time to go to those contending
Yeah.
teams and say, hey, guess what? I have Gunnar Henderson, whose price really doesn't matter because you can throw him back in anyway. But hey, Kyle, do you need more offense? Hey, Justin, do you
Yeah.
need more offense? I think he needs to be on the phones now trying to trade Gunnar Henderson, Corbin,
Yeah.
because I have no problem with this draft strategy. In fact, we can look
Yeah.
back at this in a year and say,
He could have
Jordan,
bought the five best players and then just traded them for whatever he could have gotten, and then
boom,
traded them
boom,
immediately
boom.
after the draft for
Yep.
Edwin Diaz.
Exactly, and that's kind of what I'm getting at. I think if Jordan's all intent on going in on next year, then he needs to start talking to people now about Carroll and Henderson because I just like I said with like we just said they needed to be that price for the draft, but I don't see them being worth that price next year unless they Julio Rodriguez it up. That's kind of my
Yeah.
take on it.
Yeah. And the odds of that are so slim. And
Right.
what do you think of the pitching staff?
Pitching staff wise, if I had to kind of look at it wholly, hold on, I got the draft part up here, and my phone's going real
I have it
slow.
on the screen here if you just look at the screen.
Oh, I don't have that up. I'm looking at my own. Hold on one second.
I'll talk
Pitching.
about it.
Yeah, go
With
ahead.
the pitching staff again, it's the same argument we just made. The outcome of George Kirby being worth over $25 next year is not very high, and Luis Garcia being worth more than 23. So I think you're kind of onto something that he's going to have to trade these guys, whoever can kind of buy them. Hopefully, you're thinking sooner rather than later. I'm
Yeah.
thinking when the opportunity kind of presents itself. To me, the thing that this is the catch 22 is if he trades these for like young prospect or A guys or Jordan Lawler or whoever it may be, if he does it now, he doesn't know what he's getting. Like, let's say like I trade him pieces like a Jerkson Profar. Like we don't know what he's actually going to be in Colorado right now. I would still wait a little bit to see what the roles are in some of these organizations are of some of these guys, how they're playing in AAA, if it's a prospect, what their role is with the major league team, and kind of timing them up right to get right on that buy low right before the price of those guys skyrockets. So and so just got called up, or so and so is about to get called up, or doing the research of, hey, this guy in AAA, he's really hot. And the third baseman that's in front of him is not playing well. Maybe I trade for him now. Some of those kind of things. Although I don't think many prospects were even drafted anyway, but kind of buying the dips on some of these guys and timing it up perfectly where he could make trades now, but he's not really knowing what he's getting with so many of these guys. Like I'll keep bringing him up, but like a guy like Jordan Lawler, like he doesn't know what he's getting out of that. Doesn't know how he's playing in AAA, and he could tear his ACL in AAA like Royce Lewis did. Like who knows? So there is some value in actually waiting to see what you actually have sitting on those deals instead of just kind of rolling the dice now when you have less information on the actual prospect haul you're getting in.
And another thing to add on to the Gunnar Hendersons and the Corbin Carrolls, like you said, they are for the most part unproven. They only have a little over 100 at bats, and in those
Yeah.
100 at bats, they showed that spark, which made them $25-$30 players.
Yeah.
They'll have another 100 at bats a month into the season.
Yeah.
If Corbin Carroll's got a 180 average with a
Yeah.
300 OBP, like I said, that the value I don't want to say diminishes because I think people still seek, but no one's going to over end go, I need offense bad. Let me give you this. So I don't
Yeah.
want to say their values are higher now than they ever will be because
There is, yeah, that is a good point.
but I do think there's also like, oh crap, Gunnar Henderson starts off horrible in 2 weeks and nobody's going, well, hell yeah, he was, I just, it's tough because you can wait and
Corbin Carroll
see.
may never have the value that he has right now.
Exactly. Or you can said, like you said, wait on it. Maybe Gunnar Henderson has 6 home runs and 6 steals in the first month, and then you're like,
Oh,
oh,
he
now
could be in
open the
AAA
floodgates.
by June.
Yeah, and that's the tough thing. And that's why I feel like almost with Jordan, it's I again, if it's a next year thing, I think you really got to think about trading those guys right now. And that's why I don't really mind his draft strategy. That's why I didn't want to quite say I think he overspent on guys because it's actually could be really smart if he does take on all those guys. I had the money, and now let me get stuff back for them. And I think that can end up working out well for him.
Yeah. So yeah, I gave his draft a D. If he didn't fuck it up with not knowing what he was doing, he would have been higher because I did like how he did buy into upside, but at the same time the execution was bad. He should have gone the injured veteran route versus this.
Yeah, agreed. No doubt about it.
What was your grade for him?
Again, it's one of those. I'm curious to see what he does with these guys. So I would say,
I incomplete.
yeah. I mean that's kind of the way I look at it. Like, would I say his team benefited from getting those guys? No, he's not going to be a competitor. I don't think he has enough to compete. But now again, it turns into what he does with
Gabe's
them.
team
So
has way more upside than this team. Because the odds of Carroll, Henderson, Volpe, and Walker all hitting are so slim
but wouldn't
that
you argue that he does have
he
more
needs
ups?
all of them to hit for it to be relevant.
Agreed, and that's a lot of rookies to count on. But I would almost argue that his team does have more upside because of that. I just think Dave's got a bunch of guys that, like we said 7 years ago, were good.
Yeah, we just don't know what the actual upside of those guys is. I mean,
Right.
if Corbin Carroll goes 40-40 this year, then maybe he has more upside, but who knows what it's going to be.
Agreed. Yep.
All right, going to our next team, which is maybe a little bit of a surprise. He actually had a decent draft, in my opinion, but he just kind of finds himself down here. Now, this is a team that unfortunately he finds himself in just an unfortunate purgatory based on where he is. And that's going to be sliding into the DMs, Chris. Now, he didn't have a bad draft. I like some of the draft picks that he got. Unfortunately, I just don't think that he put himself in a position to. Oh, my computer's running a little slow here.
I think
Uh,
it's fan tracks, man. It's not switching for
oh,
me.
is it? Oh, it's not
I,
something for me either. Are we
I
gonna have fan tracks go down in the middle of the
that's what
pod?
I'm
Oh,
saying, dude.
this is a
That's why I said
great look.
I couldn't switch to his pitching rotation. I reset my phone. I've been on my computer. I didn't wasn't sure if it was
Oh
just me.
no.
Like I've been trying to switch on my phone to Chris's team for like 10 minutes now, unless it's just my stuff. But
Oh man. Shoot. All right. Well, let's pause the Zoom and see if we can get this back up.
okay, I've been
All right, we're back. So taking a look at Chris's team here, it's not that he had a bad draft. I mean, I like some of the guys he had. Grandal's got ceiling, got him for $1. He's got more ceiling than Jonah Heim, I would say. Yandy Diaz, he's quality, good on base percentage guy, maybe not a whole lot of power, but hitting in a decent Tampa Bay lineup, has dual eligibility. Oscar Colas could be something for Chicago, being their starting right fielder. Castellanos for 12. You guys know how much I love Castellanos. Canna for 1. Alvarez, I don't know what he's going to be. Wisdom, he was kind of a keeper. Austin Hayes, not a huge fantasy asset, more of a better real player than a fantasy player. And even the pitching staff, Lance Lynn, I like for 16. Duran is a really good pitcher, but he's not. I don't know if he's going to have the role. I think he's going to be more of a fireman. I don't know how often he'll be used as a breaking news. I'll get to that in a sec. He'll I don't know how much he'll be used in the closer role. I think they'll still use Lopez a little bit. And Urquidy, Cueto, Graveman, Munoz. I mean, guys that are kind of questionable in the roles, not really guys that you want staples in your lineup right now. But I just look at this team and I'm just questioning what the actual upside is of Chris actually cracking kind of the top 5 at any given point this year. He has guys, and I think that there is a chance. I just question the overall viability of kind of what he has built here. What do you make of kind of what he did? I give him a B for his grade. That's what I have his draft grade is. I think he did fine. I like the values that he got. I'm not sure where he stands right now.
it's tough for me because again, the needs I had listed for him were saves, which I think same thing happened to him that happened to me was me and him both went into the draft with I think the same exact amount of money
You might
for the
not have a
most part.
single closer.
Yeah, I mean literally. I mean I don't have a closer. He doesn't I don't think he has a closer and I think he kind of got priced out of those similarly to me where I'm just like I'm just not going to pay that price for right now. 16 for Lynn, I don't hate, but my thing with that is his rotation is already filled with guys that have had injury concerns. Peralta, Sale, um, we'll see what happens. I mean, Garrett Cole's been fine, but he throws in Lance Lynn, who I think's been pretty reliable when he's on the mound. But again, a little bit of injury issues these last few years. I think there was like for me, I would have taken a Kyle Wright, a guy that's more up and coming at 20 than Lance Lynn at 16.
Yeah.
I think there's a few of those instances there where I even me getting a Jeffrey Springs at 17. I'm not saying Lance Lynn hasn't shown more than Jeffrey Springs, but I don't think we're going to get a better version of Lance Lynn than we did 2 years ago. So
Mhm.
it's tough for me. I think he needed to fill home runs. He's got a couple guys on his team like Springer that I think can hit high 20s. I think Bichette obviously has the potential to hit 30, but I really, if I was a betting man, which I sometimes am, I don't think he has a single guy on his roster that hits 30 home runs. And I don't necessarily think he has a single guy in his roster outside of Freddie Freeman and again maybe Bichette that gets close to 100 RBIs. So I think there's just too many holes still.
I don't know. The more I look at it, the more I think I'm a little low. I don't know what his pitching staff is going to look like. He's going to have to give up probably pieces of this offense to get a closer at some point. But I think we're also a little sleeping on JD Martinez a little bit. Now, I don't know if Colas is going to be anything, with the big league team, and maybe Martinez just becomes his fourth outfielder. But he has guys that can bop. He's a little thin on stolen bases, but he might not have a 30 home run guy, but he might have like 6 guys that hit 25. I mean, Freddie Freeman is, you just lock him in for 25 and 100, I feel like. Bichette, lock him in for 25 and 90. Vaughn, I think he's going to hit 25 and drive in 90. Castellanos could go 25 and 90. Springer's going to go 25 and 90 if he plays 500, if he plays more than 100
Another injury
games.
concern.
JD Martinez. I think JD Martinez is going to get back to hitting 25, 30 home runs. So if you take all those guys, I kind of like the Corey's build. He's a little thin on speed and needs a closer. And I don't know how well this rotation is, but if he can keep these guys healthy, he'll have good strikeout numbers between Garrett Cole, Sale, and Peralta. Duran is going to be a high strikeout guy, but we'll kind of see what he can turn into here. But I don't know. Maybe I'm thinking I'm a little too low. Like I said, I liked his draft. I don't know if he's in top tier, and I don't know if he's, building towards what he's kind of
Well,
building towards. I don't know.
and my thing with it, I don't think his pitching is like obviously it's not going to compete with the top rotations in the league, but I do agree with you. Having Cole, Lynn, Peralta, and Sale, if they're healthy, that's actually a pretty solid core four right there. Tyone has been amazing in spring so far for the Cubs, where
Yeah.
I think he could do something there. So really, the rotation in itself is not bad. And like you said, there's a lot of just guys in the lineup for offense. So really, I mean, does it really come down to does Castellanos and JD Martinez bounce back? Because if they both bounce back and
Yeah.
are those guys that they were, I think we're like you said, I think we're looking at this offense very differently.
Yeah, that's true. And remember, a couple years ago, I mean, yeah, Chris's team was built on the offense when he had the Jays guys. Now he traded Vlad, but that's kind of what got him to where he was. He kind of he had those cheap pitchers that he hit on, and that was his path before. Was he found the cheap pitchers? They were Keaties, the Cuetos, and the Tyone
Peralta's,
and the
yeah.
Peraltas, and then he built his more expensive offense, and that's the formula that worked for him to win Roto. So he's kind of maybe trying to take that similar path, and we'll see if he can kind of regain what he did in previous years.
It's just a lot of bounce back guys. Peralta's got to bounce back from an injury. Sale's got to bounce back from 6 injuries. Lance Lynn's got to bounce back from an injury. Who else we got? That kind of covers most of it. Again, that's all the pitchers who we kind of look at as semi the strength of the team. So it really is just a big question mark.
Yeah. Dansby Swanson homers, and the other
Hey,
breaking news is Anthony Volpe will make the opening day roster for the New York Yankees. So good news for Jordan. Looks like nobody will have to be thrown back this year for not making the roster. So that's great news there. Let's see here. Coming in at number 10 is going to be Dex's team. If you haven't heard your name by now, it's because you're moving on up. Dex's team, he's kind of another one that I gave him a draft grade of C plus. I know a lot of people are a little bit higher on the draft that he had than I am, but he's kind of another one of these teams where, I like the value that he got of Bryce Harper. I like Nico Horner and some of these guys, but he's again where he's like, his pitching staff isn't that good. I mean, it's okay. It's got Webb and Dustin May and Gallen, who should be good, but those aren't really ace level guys. I know
dude, they are. Zach
I
Gallen is
know
an
you have
ace.
the Zach Gallen,
God,
blah 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 blah.
he is an
Um,
ace. You know what's funny?
I
Real
don't
quick, as I
consider
saw. Oh,
I don't
sorry.
consider an ace on the Chicago Cubs to be an ace. I consider an ace to be a top 20 starting pitcher in the league, top 15 maybe.
Yeah, and Zach Gallen
Um,
is.
so
Yeah.
and then the offense has pieces, but he also doesn't currently have a guy to replace Bryce Harper, who is out, and he drafted all pitchers in the reserve draft. And so I don't know why people are saying he had the best draft. He has an incomplete team. He doesn't have an outfielder right now, and he doesn't have one on the bench either. So he's going to be
Yeah, but
going
that's
to
a
bat
quick
that.
fix, dude. That's just to drop someone and pick someone
Yeah,
up.
but I don't know who on the waivers right now is worth a damn in the outfield, and I don't know if Marcell Ozuna's how often he's going to play either. So I mean, there's large holes on these roster, and I don't know how much Baez has in the tank either when it regards to being a fantasy asset here. So I don't know. I sent him a message earlier. I got shot down immediately. So we'll kind of see what he kind of builds around this, but I have my questions regarding this team, and I'm not as high on it as many of you were.
Um, Obviously, yeah, the reserve draft. I don't know if he knew quite what he was doing with that because he took a lot of guys at ADPs or like 440, 480, stuff like that. So not that I don't take that into the draft account, but looking strictly at what he did at the auction, I thought he did a really good job. I thought getting Logan Webb again for what he needed. I think Gallen, Kopech, Manea, and May was a solid core. I think he could have used one more guy. Logan Webb was that guy. I know you might have looked at it as a slight overpay, but again, with how much money Dexter had, I don't think based on what his team looks like, I don't think that was bad. I think Bryce Harper was an amazing move by him because for Dexter, it's one of those things where if he does find himself out May or June, you could again either use Harper as a trade piece. $26. You can pencil him in as a keeper next year, right? I mean
Yeah,
that's penciled in. Whoever
yeah.
gets him, whoever he trades him to, he is penciled in. That is a keeper 100% next year. Javi at $3. I agree with you. How much contributing are you doing to fantasy team? He's not going to steal 20 bags. He's barely going to get 300 of an OBP. But really, if you think about all the guys he auctioned, Baez, All-Star, Harper, All-Star, Jose Barrios has been an All-Star, Marcell Ozuna, All-Star, Logan Webb has not been an All-Star, but he's pitched like an
You
All-Star the
could say the
last two
same
years.
thing about Dave's team, about when Marcell Ozuna was an all-star and when Javier Baez was an all-star. How come you didn't make the all-star argument for Dave's team, but you're making it for your buddy Dex's team? How about that?
Well, Dave had what, Yelich and Bryant as his former
Ketel Marte was
All-Stars?
an all-star that year.
Who was?
Ketel Marte?
Oh, I guess 6 years ago. I'm not looking at dudes that were All-Stars six
When was
years ago,
Marcell
but
Ozuna an all-star last?
Marcell Ozuna was good just 2 years ago.
Yeah. That's what, so 2020 versus 2019 when Ketel Marte had his breakout?
And I'm not advocating for any Marcell Ozuna love, but I will say if he can bounce back to just a couple years ago, I really don't mind Dexter's draft. I thought he came in with a pretty good core to start with, and I think he exits. I think getting Bryce Harper for 27, anyone in the draft that would have gotten Bryce Harper for 27, I think that was or 26, I think that was a steal. And you know me, I'm not a huge Nico Horner fantasy fan at $10 or $11, but I would argue Nico Horner at $1 could steal 20 bases, could score maybe in that order, leading off 85, 90 runs. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, that's a steep. You know me. We've had discussions about this. I do not love Nico Horner as a fantasy option, but for a single dollar at second base, I love that.
Mm-hmm. What's your draft grade for him?
I will say B.
B. Yeah, he gets a C. He got a C plus for me. Yeah, the reserve draft inexcusable, and having a empty spot. I can't put you higher than a C plus on that. Let's move on to number 9, who we are going to disagree on. I alluded to him earlier, but only could get him up to 9. He is number 6 in my rankings. Justin, I got your back. Justin, the Wahoo Maniacs, is coming in at number 9 in our consensus rankings. Like I said, I loved all the values that he got in the draft. I thought he had the best draft night out of anyone, getting guys like Max Muncy for 13 and Rowdy Tellez for 6 and Jock Peterson for 1. I wasn't crazy about Jock Peterson when I saw the draft pick. I'm like, Jock Peterson, until I realized that Roster Resource has him not even in a platoon, but the starting left fielder for the San Francisco Giants full time and the 3 hitter for them. So we're talking about lineup context with some guys home run or RBI opportunities. Jock Peterson for $1 is going to be the 3 hitter for San Francisco against righties and lefties. So I was worried about his outfield. Conforto, Gallo, not really sure what he has there. But then he was able to scoop up Mancini in the reserve draft and Verdugo in the 3rd round of the reserve draft, who is a starting quality guy. I think that Dex would kill for a guy like Verdugo to fill his outfield. So maybe there's a trade somewhere there. And then the pitching staff was kind of an underrated pitching staff. I mean, Castillo's not like a top 5 guy, but he's a top 10, 15 guy. And Detmers, who's had an incredible spring. He's up in velocity. He's got like a 92 mile. He's got like a DeGrom level slider. From what I'm hearing, he got his 2 closers at good values. Pablo Lopez, just a guy that a little lunch pail guy, just goes in, puts in his 3.5 ERA, gets you 180 strikeouts and clocks out. And Gonsolin is going to start the year on the IL, so we'll see what his rotation looks like at the start of the year without Gonsolin. But Hayden Wesneski, named the 5th start of the Cubs, absolute stud, is going to be filling in for him. So I think this is one of the most complete rosters that we have, where he's got a little bit of everything. He's a little devoid in speed. I think that's the one thing he kind of needs to add to this roster. And maybe you can get that somewhere else, but he's got some good depth. He's got some good players, and it's not like he had a ton of money to work with, but I really like the way he spent it.
I don't think Justin had a bad draft. My thing is, the pitching still need. I would argue you can have depth all you want, but he's got one guy that I could trust in Castillo, and even then you look
There's
back
not
at.
a guy in this rotation that I don't like.
But after Castillo, those are all 3s and 4s.
Yeah. So he's not going to have the top rotation, no, but I didn't put him number 1 in my
What
rankings.
what
He's gonna have a
category do
good
you?
above. What's that?
I would argue based on none of his pitchers, Castillo's the only one that I think averages a K an inning. Gonsolin does not. Bassett does not. I'm just quickly kind of looking at their projections. I know the projections aren't
Yeah.
always right. Pablo Lopez just barely scratches it, and you got Bard on Colorado, a 70-win team. Iglesias isn't starting. Who knows? I mean, again, I don't hate the prices for that. My thing is, I think Justin needed pitching, and I think he depthed it out. And I don't think he actually needed the offense as much. And I think he did a fine job filling in those offensive holes. But my needs for him heading into the draft were saves, which he accomplished, strikeouts, which I don't know if I'd quite saying he accomplished that because I don't think he got
Mhm.
like a workhorse strikeout guy. ERA, again, how many of these guys are going to finish with a sub 3.5 ERA? Like
Mhm.
genuinely, one, maybe two.
No. Well, I think both. Well, Bard might not, but Iglesias will. I think Pablo
Yeah, if
Lopez
you're looking
will.
at closers, yeah.
Pablo Lopez, I think will. Pablo Lopez, last year he finished stronger than he started. 3.75 ERA, but 3.01 ERA the year, or 3.07 ERA the year before. I think he's going to fall somewhere in between there. I think it's going to be a 3.4, 3.5 ERA for Pablo
Yeah.
Lopez, who's still only 27.
And
He's still kind of getting better.
and
Detmers,
if
I think he's gonna have a breakout year this year. I don't buy the 3.77. His strikeouts might not be what they are, but if his stuff is what they're saying, it looks like he's gonna strike out more guys this year and he'll have a good ERA. I think that everybody in his rotation might have it under 3.5 ERA outside Daniel Bard.
Oh, I completely disagree.
And I think Gonsolin, well, the thing about Gonsolin is that he's got the regression coming, but he's going to regress from a 2.14 ERA. Even if he regresses a full run up to 3.14, he is still a damn good
Yeah,
fantasy.
I mean, yeah, you could see Gonsolin doing that, but again, with the way they run their rotation, he's not gonna match 16-1 again, like you said. He's not gonna
Yeah.
get a strikeout per inning. His WHIP was magnificent last year, so yes, Gonsolin at that price, amazing. That was a good keeper, which is why I don't really think he had to focus so much on pitching, or if he did, he needed to get like a star because I just feel like these are a lot of just fill in, eat some innings guys that are solid, but it's not going to put you near or over the top. And Jock Peterson and Michael Conforto are hitting in San Francisco. Yeah, they're hitting 3-4 in the order, but they're I don't think either of them hit 30 home runs this year.
Mhm.
Um, Conforto's always hurt. Gallo. I mean, I don't hate Justin's draft. It seemed like it was more of like a let's fill in the pieces, but Justin was already the ninth or 10th best team. What here justifies, I think, jumping up to a playoff team? I'm just not seeing it.
I wonder if there's like Chris sends Chris Sale and Nick Castellanos to Justin for Rowdy
Right.
Tellez and
I like that.
and somebody and Pablo Lopez or
And let's
Chris
not
Bassett
forget
or something.
and let's not forget Justin's ace, who you just said might be a top 10, 15 pitcher, and Gallon is way better than Castillo. I'm just going to throw that out there right now.
He's not.
Dude, look at the numbers. Yes, he
I'm a
is.
Gallon
Yes,
guy, but they're in the same tier.
no, they're not. They're not. Well, let's not forget that it was just a year before last year. Luis Castillo, everyone was going crazy because someone bid 27 or whatever on him, and he had a 4 ERA with almost a 1.4 WHIP. That
Do you,
was just a year ago.
That was just a year ago, and then he figured it out, and now he's not pitching in freaking Cincinnati, Great American Small Park anymore. Now he's pitching in Seattle.
But my thing with that is I love Castillo. In fact, I would even go and try to get a Castillo from Justin, but it's one of those things I don't think you can sit there and go, I trust him 100% to replicate what he did last year. I don't think you can look at any of these guys and say, I 100. Chris Bassett, for the most part last year, again, I like him. I like him at that price. He kind of, in essence, kind of 2021, 2022, in the last couple of years has come out of nowhere. So I don't think there's a lot of trust in the rotation for me. I think the offense is pretty balanced, like you said. I think he's filled out his offense pretty well, or I would say it's probably in the top half of the league. But I still think there's like it's just missing one or two star players to really be where he needs to be.
Justin gets an A+ from me.
I will say B minus.
Oh, the disrespect. Put some respect on that man's name.
Well, you're trying to win, right? You're trying to. I guess we're not in the power. Where did you have him since he's?
I had him at 6 in my power rankings.
Okay, so you do think he
Fringe
did
playoff.
enough to be? And I don't know if we're going over playoff teams at the end, but theoretically, with him being 6, that means you do have this roster as a playoff roster.
Yes. I didn't think about putting my playoff predictions in. We didn't do playoff predictions, but we need
Well,
to.
it's the top 6 teams, right?
Maybe we need to record another podcast next weekend with playoff predictions and bold takes.
Well, I mean, it is the top 6 teams, right? The 2
Yeah,
division
top 6.
winners, and then
Yep.
yeah.
He jumped up from 9 from 9 to 6 for me. And so you had him previously you had him at 10 and you have him at 11. So you moved him down 1. I moved him up 3.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest difference we've had.
Yeah. All right, coming in at number 8, Justin still couldn't get ahead of his buddy Tyler. Coming in at number 8, I think there were some gaps in some of what Tyler did. I mean, he took a couple guys that aren't on rosters. Yepez, who in the reserve draft, he took him. I like the Garrett Mitchell pickup. He overpaid for William Contreras. I mean, he basically paid the Wilson Contreras price for the.
Dude, no. Hold on. Stop right now. Stop right now. You paid 11 for Melendez.
Yes.
Go look at their numbers side
I
to
didn't
side.
say that was a good value.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
I'm not going to sit here. We haven't gotten to me yet, but
all right, true.
Chill out for a second because I already know that I fucked up my draft. So
all right,
stop it, and
we'll hold off on that one. We'll hold off on that one.
I like Tim Anderson for 21. Chris Taylor for 2 is decent. I think he's going to probably play every day because of all the injuries that they've had already, and they just kind of need a guy to be in their lineup. I still think that there's a little bit of a talent void. Obviously, hitting is going to be a weakness for him, but the pitching staff looks better than Justin's. And I mean, there's still kind of some upside here, but this is, again, still one of our top pitching staffs we're going to see in the league. And he decided to go out and overspend for Felix Bautista, but it kind of fits his pitching staff perfectly for what it needs. He needed that closer to kind of round out what he had here, what he was building with Fried, Gilbert, Urias, and Valdez. So I kind of don't hate it. I still think that there's some gaps in the back end of this rotation. I don't know if Dylan Floro is going to have the role, or what that Miami, bullpen is going to look like. I don't know if there's going to be one guy at all this year, and I don't know how many games they're going to win anyway. I don't know when Ranger Suarez is coming back, how good he'll be. Domingo Herman, we'll kind of see. I'm not really loving the back end of the rotation, and I'm not loving, a lot of these guys here. A lot of these guys have a lot to prove. A lot of guys coming off down years, and I don't know what he's going to get out of Jake McCarthy. I know he's going to get out of Riley Green and Brandon Lau on a bounce back, and Oswald Peraza and Will Myers. So there's really quite a low floor for this team, and I don't even know if those guys have upside. I don't know what Riley Green's upside is. He hasn't proven to be worth a damn. I don't know what Will Myers' upside is. I like that he's in Cincinnati, but that's about the only thing he's got going for him. And Yastrzemski, Peraza, I just don't really see. Look at their projection. Oh no, so their last year stats. Never mind. I'm not really loving what I'm seeing here, which is why I put Justin ahead of Tyler.
And here's my thing, and I think these two teams are very close. I think Justin drafted better than Tyler. Yeah. I liked Tyler's team more coming into the draft, though. I think it was better. Yeah. But I still, overall, looking at the teams as a whole, I think I would take Justin's offense over Tyler's, but I would take Tyler's pitching over Justin's, and I don't think it's close.
Yeah.
And really, I don't think it's close at all. So I think
I could see that, but that's because we disagree on what Justin's pitching rotation is. Because I don't think
right.
that Justin's rotation is as far behind this rotation, even going 1 for 1. With this rotation, it is. If you're going, Urias to Castillo,
Dude, Urias is better. Yes, he is.
they're
Yeah,
in
he
the
is.
same tier. Go look at any ranking. I
No,
need to pull up
no.
the Fantasy Pros average rank. Fantasy Pros ADP, and you're gonna find Gallon, Castillo, and fucking what's his nuts all in the
At
same.
some point, you just got to look at the numbers and see that Urias had a 2.16 ERA last year, and if he say he has 200 innings, he's right around 185 Ks, like a 2.16, a point .9 WHIP. There is nothing that Castillo did better than him outside of throw a few more strikeouts, probably.
So here we have. Oh, whoa! Look at Gallon at starting pitcher 29, and
And it,
look at Castillo at 20, and Urias at 15. So you can't say that there's
it,
some massive gap between there.
I
They're
think
all in the
they're.
same tier. And if any of
Where's
them,
Freed? Hold on, hold
Gallon
on.
is the one
Let's
not in
keep
the
doing
tier.
this. Let's keep doing this. Let's keep doing this. Where's Freed at?
Freed, he's high, right? Freed, where is he at? Why is he not coming up? Oh, there
Freed
he is.
and Valdez.
Freed and Valdez. So Freed is 19, Valdez is 27.
So in essence, Kyle or Tyler has three pitchers in the top 30, three pitchers in the top 27,
Yeah.
and Tyler and Justin has one, and I'd like to know where the next one is.
Uh, it depends. Yeah,
I mean, literally, go. Where is his next starting pitcher in
it'll
that list? It'd
be
be
not in the top 100.
it'd probably be Bassett or Lopez. So the rotations aren't close. They're not. In my opinion,
You're
they're
gonna
just
be
not.
surprised at the end of the year.
We'll see. We'll see. I don't think the rotations are close, and I do think Justin's offense is better, but I think it's a little bit tighter. Here's Tyler's problem. If you scroll to the right of projections, his OBP, he does not have a single dude on his roster outside of Pete Alonso that has a 350 OBP or higher. We're talking 318, 314, 330, 330, 330. Tim Anderson's going to hit 317. That doesn't matter, Tyler. He doesn't walk. His OBP is going to be 10 points higher than than that. And that's why I don't love the Tim Anderson signing. For 21, I know he was the best shortstop available, but 15 home runs, 18 steals, a 330 OBP, that's
Yeah.
worth $20. I don't know. I mean, I know that was what the market dictated, but I don't hate Tyler's offense. I do think it actually is. I don't even want to say the word balance because I do think there are some holes, but I think it's there. I think there's some upside. I like Justin's better, but I just don't think the pitching's close, and that's where I kind of had to just give Tyler the nod as an overall team over Justin.
Yeah, I can see what you're saying, but yeah, the biggest discrepancy is I think that Justin's rotation will overperform their ADPs, and I think that Tyler's rotation will underperform their ADPs based on
Yeah.
what they are. Like I look at the skill set of Framber Valdez and I compare that to the skill set of what Pablo Lopez is, and I don't think there's a massive discrepancy there, even though they're 100 pretty far apart when it comes to kind of their ADP of kind of what they are. So
I think once you've put in when you start putting in three full major league seasons, I'm not saying that the potential question can't keep being answered, but at some point, I mean, I was a Pablo Lopez guy too. But once you've had four full major league seasons, at what point do you just say the proof's in the pudding? Valdez has had better years than him. Urias has had I don't know. I understand that the rankings in this always look at like what they can do and what they can do,
if
but
you compare what Pablo Lopez did 2 years ago with what Valdez did 1 year ago, it's not that far off.
Valdez did it again and Lopez didn't.
No, I'm saying what yeah, okay. Argument can be, Pablo Lopez only done it once.
And Valdez just did it back to back years. I mean, he literally put pretty much two full back to back seasons.
With a
A
bad
three,
whip, with a bad whip though.
yeah, but strikeout an inning, so
Yeah.
that almost makes up for it. Yeah, I mean, like I said, I'm not saying they're worlds
Under
off, but
a strikeout an inning. You're the big under a strikeout an inning guy.
well, I mean, it's within five. I think that's pretty close. 200 innings, 194 strikeouts. I'm gonna say that's a strikeout an inning, even though it's not quite. It's what 8.85 strikeouts.
Same thing to be said with all of Justin's pitchers then.
No, dude, no, that's not true. Gonsolin was like
Yes.
30 strikeouts underneath his innings pitched last year.
Yes, as a rookie, and he's gonna get better.
He's 28.
Who?
Gonsolin.
Well, yeah, maybe his strikeouts won't get better.
So,
All right.
so yeah, I think we're spending too much time on the ninth and 10th teams here.
Yeah, we might be. Tyler, I gave Tyler a B. Like I said, I liked his draft. I just again, he's kind of, they're in this purgatory now of not good enough to win the league, but not bad enough to be in the Dave range.
Yeah, I'll give him a C plus because I do like Justin's draft better, and I gave Justin a B minus. My and I do agree that Batista was the biggest overpay, but I do know what you mean in terms of what he needed to fit on his team. He needed a closer. So is he keeping Bautista at 27 next year? No, he's gonna just he needs that closer. So I'm not. That's why it's weird this year for like what was the biggest overpay? What was the biggest? Because some of it almost doesn't matter because you
Yeah,
know they're just gonna be thrown back in. You know what I
yeah.
mean?
Uh-huh. So moving on to our next team, which is number let's see here,
8 is it?
eight. No, it's seven because
Oh,
Tyler.
7.
So
All right.
seven. So we're about halfway through. Here we are, and over an hour and halfway through.
Not bad.
Is going to be Jay, which is I really don't know what to make of Jay's team because I I kind of like his draft, but I kind of also have him down here. I'm gonna let you take the lead on this because I could see him arguing being like second or third, and I could see him arguing being like eight or nine. I mean, I could
Yeah.
argue Justin's ahead of him, and I could argue him the guys I have ahead of him under him. So what do you make about what Jay did in the draft and where he's currently sits?
And to hit on that point, I think this really hits what you said at the beginning of the draft. I do think that it's closed down, but I don't think that I still think the top four. I do see a close because I had the same exact thought looking at Jay's team. I knew he wasn't going into the draft with much, and I'm like, what's he going to do with that? And how can he not with $14 somehow drop a couple spots, right? I mean,
Yeah,
teams are going to get better.
yeah,
But this is when we said it pre-show. This is the exact same thing that happened last year. I think Jay went in with $15, got a bunch of $1 or $3, $1 to $2, $3 players, and won the league.
yeah.
I like what Jay did with his money. So in terms of with how much money he had and what he was able to add to his team, I will say I think he got like a B plus A minus draft.
Hmm.
I think Justin Turner for $1 is a steal, possibly hitting in the middle of that lineup. Cal Quantrill, another arm. Seawald, he might be in a committee. We'll see, but I think right now that job is his unless he just completely folds apart. We'll see what happens with Munoz there. Again, these aren't superstar game changing players, but I'm actually kind of impressed with how he filled out his roster with the little money he had. I think he got valuable guys that you could see on his roster for the long term. But my thing is, the I still had a lot of needs before the draft. I had stolen bases, which if we look at stolen bases, he has Mateo, fix that, Merrifield, fix that. But both are going to have under a 300 OBP, and both are going to have less than 50 RBIs, and both are going to hit less than 10 home runs. So that's tough. Um, RBIs, looking at RBI wise, not bad. I think he did all right there. Real quick, last couple here. So I keep going back and forth. I will say OBP and pitching and saves. I think the pitching, I don't know. It's tough. I'm right there with you where I think this team has talent. I like the offense. I think he's got Buxton, Hernandez, Stanton, Turner. These are names we know we like. But I just wonder how the pitching holds up past Woodruff, past Darvish. That was the question we had entering the draft, and I still think it's a question after.
I originally I wrote Jay down for an A minus because I liked his plan and I like how he executed it. But I look at the guys that actually got in the draft and I am unimpressed. And I'm about to say the exact same thing that I've said every year after Jay's draft. And I don't know how often, how many times I have to say it, but I'm so unimpressed by these dollar guys that he got. And like, I think that his rotation doesn't look good because I'm not a huge fan of Tyler Anderson, Alex Cobb, Cal Quantrill, and Paul Sewald as guys that are active in his lineup right now that he needs to pitch well in order to be successful. But I don't hate them either, especially at $1, $3, $1, and $1. Seawald will get saves, but I think that Munoz will get more saves than Seawald will. I think it'll, if anything, it might be maybe a 50-50 split there. Tyler Anderson, we'll see if he can replicate what he found in with the Dodgers now with the Angels, because we know the Angels never know how to pitch. So we'll
Him and
kind of,
Gonsolin are the exact same player.
yeah. But at least Gonsolin's still with the best pitching organization, pitching factory in the league, and now Tyler Anderson is with the worst. So we'll kind of see what happens there. And really, my biggest criticism would be with these $1 guys. I mean, Turner for one, we'll see if he has what he has left in the tank. Last year, it didn't prove to be much with his 13 home runs and over 450 at bats. Still at 81 RBIs and a decent on base percentage. He's still a quality hitter, but I'm wondering if he's at 38 years old, if he's running out of gas in the tank. And it's not like he's going to be in the good Dodgers lineup anymore. He's now with the Red Sox. Maybe he can still poke a few balls over the green monster, but we'll see. Jorge Mateo is the epitome of literally a one category producer, but he's not even like a good one category producer because he's like a negative category producer because he brings you down in those categories. It's not just that he doesn't contribute. It's not like Arias where, okay, well, he's not really contributing in some, but he's not dragging you down anywhere. But he is dragging you down in on base percentage, a 267 on base percentage, a 221 average. He's had 50 RBIs last year. He had 63 runs scored, and he's projected to hit ninth again in a not very good Baltimore lineup. So he's only getting 3 at bats in most games. He's not going to get that 4th at bat hitting ninth. So I don't know where his RBIs are, his run scores are going to be, his home runs, and his on base percentage is going to kill you. So I don't really love Mateo at 1. And Whit Merrifield, I don't know how washed he is. If Whit Merrifield turns it around and Justin Turner kind of goes to the fountain of youth, and maybe he has something. But I say this every year about Jay's team. And I was like, oh, I don't like these cheap guys he got. And then the cheap guys like McCutchen just end up playing well and he turns them into something or
Yeah.
whatever it is. And then he's back near the top towards the end of the year. So I shouldn't be super critical, but I am. I have to call it like I see it. And I like the strategy of filling the pitching late with guys like it's not that I don't like Tyler Anderson and Alex Cobb, but for a team that has aspirations of winning it all, I don't really love them as my 3, 4, and 5 guys, but we'll kind of see how things turn out, I guess. I just think the biggest difference is that I don't think he has the stars that he's had in the past. I mean, I don't think that Buxton, Seager, Matt Olson, and Real Muto are good enough to carry what I think is a subpar offense.
I agree, and again, I, it's just right after, like you said, right after Darvish and Woodruff, it's just a bunch of like who knows what really good. The good thing is both those guys are huge strikeout guys because Contrell and Anderson are not at all, and they're not at all so much that I think it actually might make Woodruff and Darvish being K guys almost be a wash because Anderson and Contrell are not going to strike guys out. I do think, like I said, if you get Seawald, who could be 25 saves if he's the closer for $1, Turner for $1, Tyler Anderson with the ERA he had for $1. I do think you're getting value there with how much money he had, but I'm right there with you in terms of I think he's right in that middle of that order in terms of power rankings because I don't think he's quite up to that next tier yet.
Yeah. So I went B minus for him, or I went B plus for him actually.
I think I said B plus. Yeah, I think B plus as well. Yeah.
All right. So next we are going to go to number 6 in our power rankings, where we find Mr. Kokemish Eric Follman.
Hey, hey.
You were a lot higher on your own draft than I was. I'm going to be picking some nits here with your draft. I didn't love the way that you rounded out your roster with nothing but question marks. I like the India pickup, but I'm not sure what you're getting with Josh Naylor. I'm not sure what you're getting with Oscar Gonzalez. Not a stolen base guy, not really a big, producer offensively as it is. Tristan Casas kind of a question mark. And when you kind of have these floor guys and Segura and Rushman and some of these guys, I'm not sure what the feeling is. Hey, I'm giving a compliment. I'm saying I'm saying Adley Rushman has a solid floor.
Oh
And
man.
the upside is I don't think Rushman's gonna hit 30 home runs and driving 100 this year.
No catcher ever really
Um,
does.
so, and I think that the rotation needed help, and I like Springs, but I think it needs more help than Springs and Rogers. And so I just didn't really love the direction. And I think you're kind of in the same class that like Chris is, where it's like a purgatory class right now, where this rotation is not one of the top 5 rotations in the league. And I don't think this lineup it's borderline top 5, but it's not top 3. So tell me
I,
about how
I,
your draft went and what you're thinking.
while I'll explain that, I would like for you to tell me which lineups in this league. I'm not. You said I'm borderline top 5. Try to find 5 lineups that are better than mine.
I'm gonna need some time.
That's fine. Try to do that. I'm very very
Yeah,
curious.
you can go on about your strategy.
I would say I didn't love my draft either. I wanted to go in and I'm not, without breaking down my whole draft strategy because I'm not going to do that. Devin Williams was a guy I was obviously looking at. I was looking at a saves guy, but kind of like I said last podcast, I'm not by any means punting a category, but I feel like with the way saves are, a month from now, I mean, there might still be some teams in the league that only have 3 or 4 saves total. I mean, you can have 5 saves in a week, you can have no saves for 2 weeks with 2 closers. It happens. So I think there's a couple teams that might be desperate for closers because they don't have any, but I don't think you have to have a closer at all times. I think that's something 3 weeks from now, 4 weeks from now, you can get without having to go full desperation mode and give up a lot of players. So I kind of got outpriced on some of those closers, especially Batista. I think obviously too much. Williams was right around where I'd pay for him, but who knows if I would have bumped that to 21, does Williams end up going for 24, 25? Again,
Mhm.
not really what I was comfortable with. So I didn't get the closer that I wanted, but I knew going into the draft I really didn't have to get much offense because I do have one of the best offenses in the league. So I kind of filled that out with some promise and some bounce back guys. Kasaf's hitting in the middle of that lineup, possibly maybe lead off. He said I don't know, but possibly doing that. He's getting rave reviews out of spring training. Suzuki for $2, I think is an absolute steal. I really do. I think again hitting 3/4 in that Chicago lineup. I think he could hit 25 home runs with a 350, 360 OBP. Um, I think Jonathan India, again, we're 1 year removed from him being rookie of the year. We had a 380 OBP with 21 home runs and 15 steals. So
Like
I
the
think,
India and Suzuki picks.
what's up?
I did like those two picks, India and
Yeah.
Suzuki.
And those were guys I really wasn't intent on going into the draft. Those were guys that were selected, nominated, and I'm like, there's no way these guys are going for $2 or $3. Like there's just
Yeah.
no way. And I filled out my roster like that, which I was fine
Kind
with.
of how you have to do it. That's what good
Yeah.
drafters do is you adjust, you react and go, I'm going to price enforce this. And if I get them, awesome.
Right. And I actually personally, I know he's out for the first month, and he's always an injury concern, but I knew that there wasn't those top line pitchers in the draft. I really don't hate my McCullers for 11 at all. I actually see that as a very sneaky keeper for next year because when he's on the field, again, that is a guy that has never been a bad pitcher, really. He's always been well over a strikeout an inning, pretty solid ERA through and through. He's on a good team where the wins
If
and
you
qualities
ignore whip, yeah.
starts. I mean, a 1.15 career or 1.2 career whip is probably about league average. If you're at a 1, you're elite, right? A 1.1, you're elite. So
Yeah.
um, Jeffrey Springs was a guy I had last year who was excellent for me.
Yeah, he's great.
He was fantastic. Again, more than a strikeout an inning, very good whip, a great ERA. I was kind of surprised that he hung around as long as he did. To me, honestly, more so, I liked my team heading into the draft, and this was kind of just rounding it out. I didn't get the closer I wanted. I didn't need much offense, but I still picked up Suzuki, Casas, and India, and I felt like I had to get depth in pitching, and I think I got that with McCullers, Springs. We'll see if Justin Steele can take that next step this year. There was part of me that wanted to go in and spend 30 on just one big superstar guy. I thought about doing that for like a Logan Webb was someone that was on my radar. But if I spent 37 on Webb, I would have literally had to dollar it out the rest of my team. So I went in looking for a little bit more depth on pitching, guys I can maybe trust. I think Springs and McCullers are those guys. And I rounded out the lineup, which I was honestly very content going into the reserve draft and filling out the 3 or 4 spots in my lineup that I needed because my lineup was so good to begin with.
To answer your question, sir, I would take Peter's offense, Krim's
Okay.
offense, Bill's offense, Chad's offense ahead of yours. And I
Okay.
would put you in the tier starting at number 5 in a tier with Dex, Justin, and Chris.
Okay. I'd like to know what you were smoking before the show started.
Okay.
Be-
But
I, I hold on real quick. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I have 6 top 100 hitters in my lineup. I bet you none of those guys have that.
congrats.
Well, Peter and Phil probably do, but keep
Congrats.
going though.
Well, if you're going by arbitrary numbers, yes, sure. Good job. We'll see. When your team is in 8th place through the first 2 months, as it always is, we'll
It
see.
always is. It
As
always
we'll
is.
see if you can make the sprint towards the finish like you always try and do, and we'll see if you make it there this time or you don't, because
Yeah.
it's always how it is.
And my thing too, we talked about the lack of pitching before the draft, which I agree. I mean, there was a lack of pitching in the draft. There was more valuable hitters, but when I kind of went through and looked at lineups, it actually more so hit me where I'm like, I'm not a fan of a lot of these teams' lineups. I think they are missing a lot of stuff. That's why when you say you think there's 5 or 6, and I'm in a fringe with 4 other teams, I went through the lineups, dude, and I'm like, there's probably 4 or 5 lineups that I think are not awful, but very below average. Like I feel like they're just missing 2 or 3 bats, if not more. So I think there's a lot of teams that are lacking in lineups. protection.
All
Yep.
right, let's go to number 5 on our list, which is Chad. I'm gonna let you take the lead on Chad's because I kind of had a different approach to kind of how I saw it. I see the upside here, but why don't you kind of tell me what you saw in his draft and what you liked and didn't?
I think Chad, like I said last week, he had the chance to make the most move in the power rankings. I think he had the most move to make noise because I think his team was set up enough where he had money to spend. And with the right spending, he could vault himself into a playoff position. And I think he 100% did that. I think he went in there needing a closer. He got the best one for $20, which is exactly the price I would have pinned him at. He got Giolito for 30, which we could argue, was it better than dropping Cobb? I think it's again right around in that same ballpark. He got
Webb.
the he got the best third baseman. Alex Bregman 31, which I could even argue when I saw that price go up that much. I think I even said in the draft, I'm like, wow, we're letting guys with that can get steals and do, but he got a big bat in Bregman and he had the money to do it. He went out there and did it. Jose Abreu, I kind of discussed that already with some of the other first basemen that went for their prices. And I think there was a loads of first basemen where even I don't know if I would have spent 17 on Abreu. I think there was just so many just guys that are going to hit 20, 25 home runs that you could just count on. But to get Jose Abreu in the middle of that lineup for 17, great. The only one I had a problem with was Bellinger. And I know we got a lot of Cubs fans in here. They're looking for a
By
bounce
the
back
way,
here. Yeah.
going off your arbitrary top 100 rankings, Chad has 7 in the top 100 compared to your 6.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I said, yeah. Peter, Phil, Chad. And that's why I like Chad's draft a lot. He picked up 3 of those guys in this draft.
Okay.
So I think I like it a lot. I think Bellinger is I wouldn't have paid 11 for him. I think that's honestly a guy you might maybe could have even waited for the reserve, but I do see the upside there. And how do you not like the Trevor Story for $6? I mean, that is again, you could probably pencil that into as a keeper next year where he's not only looking forward to a head to next year. I think Chad's team is set up really nice where he's got a nice mix of A, B, and C contracts where he's not only going to compete this year, I think he's actually set up already as one of the better teams next year with how some of these guys could potentially fit in for 2024. So I like Chad's draft a lot. I think he with the money he went in, he fit those exact needs that he had to do.
Yeah, I'm having a hard time understanding where his kind of what his niche is going to be for this year because I thought that he had the squad, he has the upside and he had the money to go out and make a run at a title this year. And I think he's got a chance to do that, except he's really making his floor low with some of these players. And by doing that, he didn't it's almost like he's always playing for next year. Like he drafted, yeah, sure, Story is a good pickup. And yeah, Gavin Lux and Young and Mauricio and Kalenic, these guys might be something, but he didn't have a good enough team with the depth to just for completely punt his reserve draft. And so with all that being said, like Wander Franco already has a soft tissue injury. We already have a red flag on Jazz Chisholm who can't stay healthy. We don't know if Cody Bellinger is going to be any good this year. And you know, and with all these guys there, he doesn't have any bench. There's not a guy on his bench that can go in right now who I have any confidence in actually being productive. So he was another guy who I kind of put in the same class as Peter, where it's like, man, he had the money that Peter didn't have. He just had to not screw it up and go kind of get more floor guys. And I didn't see him do that. And I just think that his floor is so low when it comes to a lot of these. And even with his rotation, he's got heavily injury prone guys, and not just injury prone, heavily the most injury prone guy in the league, DeGrom, Flaherty, and then he replaced his bench pitchers are Ashby, who's already not pitching. He's hurt. And Glass now is on his bench, not hurt. And yeah, sure, you got Devin Williams, which helps. Leclerc maybe is the closer for Texas. We'll see. But I just don't think his team was good enough to completely punt the reserve draft and not go get depth. So I think he kind of fucked it up. I'm not going to lie to you. So that's kind of why I gave Chad a B minus for his draft. I had him 5th in my rankings. Looks like you actually had him 6th, a little bit lower, but he had the world in his hands, and I did not like the way he did it. I like how he went and got Bregman and Abreu, and those were the types of pickups that I hoped he would have gotten. But the way he rounded it out, it leaves so many question marks.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, like I said, I like it a lot. The bench, it's tough because the bench has changed so much. I'm not, and again, the reserve draft, I hate this. I'm not saying it doesn't have value. There's a couple guys in there that'll kind of break out and be worth it, but I'm not necessarily looking at dudes' benches all too much because I mean, it's going to look a lot different even just from
You
a
kind of
month from
have
now.
to when you
So
have guys like Wander Franco, Jazz Chisholm, Jacob DeGrom, and Flaherty who are always hurt.
yeah, I mean, that was and that's the same question with the pitching, like you said. And even last week we made that note of he's got money, he's got the names for pitchers, but does he back that up with the depth? And it's all going to be, and you could say it's about any fantasy sport. It's all about staying healthy. If this lineup and this rotation stays healthy, it's
Yeah.
it's no doubt playoff team.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And it might be a playoff team even with a couple injuries because he does have that kind of upside. If these guys, if a couple of these guys do hit their ceilings, like Jazz Chisholm and Bellinger and some of these guys, but yeah, and especially the pitching staff. But yeah, I just wish he would have built in more floor here. And I mean, this is almost like a team that's kind of a candidate to do, 2-for-1 or 3-for-1, where he gets the 2 or the 3 to kind of aid what he has here. But the Gavin Lux thing is a complete head scratcher. I put that in the chat. For $3, he's going to miss all year. And without
Yeah.
playing an ounce of baseball this year, you're going to have any confidence to keep him for 3 when he hasn't proven he's actually a major league ball player? You can get him for 1 next year, I would assume.
He's like
I
a
don't.
Nick Madrigal at this point. Like I don't
Yeah,
know. Like,
exactly. So I just don't understand that one there. And did Josh Young make the team, or I don't know?
I think he is going to make the team. I think he's got some potential. I think that's one guy that
I
you got
do
to watch
too. I,
out
I
for.
do
But
like him. So the ceiling's there, but I thought he could have done better. So yeah, I gave him a B- for his draft grade.
I gave him an A-. I really like what he's able to do. I think obviously outside of Dave with the money, or geez, outside of Jordan with the money he had, I think Chad, you could argue definitely picked up the most just good talent overall. So I like what Chad did.
All right, number 4. Do you want me to tell you what I liked, or you want to tell me what you didn't like about Phil's draft?
Bill's draft was interesting. Going into it, I figured he needed stolen bases, and I had pitching health with a question mark because I was kind of worried about that. I think stolen base wise, he got Abrams. Okay, we'll see how that goes over the course of the year because Abrams played 40 games last year and had 6 steals, so he's on a 23, 24s. Other than that, he really doesn't have many stolen base guys at
Yeah,
all. So I don't think he really addressed that need with how much speed was in the draft to only come out of there with one guy when I think that was a need. I don't think that was very good. And then the pitching health wise, you got Blake Snell who's going to give you 4 innings. Rodon's already hurt. Malley he's been trying to punt off, who's like a $1-2 player. I was surprised he even kept him.
yeah.
I do like the Merrill Kelly one. I think Merrill Kelly did pretty well last year. He kind of proved himself good, but again, that was a 1 year thing. He's only done it 1 year. What can we really expect out of Merrill Kelly doing it again at
At
34
34.
years old? Yeah, 34 years old. Was that a
after
fluke?
after completing being dishonorably discharged from the
Yeah.
the Team USA.
And that's kind of my thing. It's like this is you got Nola Rodon. Rodon's already hurt. Snell can't get through 5 innings. So I don't think the pitching staff's really that good. That's why I don't know why he was so intent on getting a second closer. And the one he did settle on, Diaz, I agree could be the closer. I think he's got a lot of potential. But why didn't you just spend 17 on Batista and just get that for sure closer on a good team? That's kind
27.
or not Batista, Iglesias.
Oh yeah,
Iglesias.
he tried.
Um, on Atlanta on a good team rather than spend 14 on. I just honestly, I was not a fan of Phil's draft at all. I don't think he addressed the needs he needed to address. I don't mind Jury at 6 again with that first base market. I think 7 for Abrams was too high. I think 7 for Kelly was fine, but 21 for Snell. Again, I know pitching was rough, but I've been on that Snell train before. It is not a fun train to
Why do
be
we
on.
always overpay for Blake Snell?
We
Are
do,
we,
and
are we buying the Cy Young?
and here's my thing: if you need strikeouts, go and get it. But you have Rodon and Nola. I would rather focus on a guy that has the whip and could get me through 5 or 6 innings, that could get me the quality starts and this and that, rather than a guy that's going to get you 4 innings and 7 Ks every time out. So
Plus,
I,
when Rodon comes back, you think they're going to let him throw 7 innings?
I don't know, and
We have an
maybe
arm injury.
yeah, maybe because he's always one that towards the end of the year really fatigues a lot.
Yeah,
And we already talked about last week. He's not pitching in nice old San Francisco anymore. He's pitching in New York. So those numbers will not look the same as they did last year. So I think Phil's rotation is honestly a huge question mark. And his offense, I mean, there is no doubt at all. When we did this show last year compared to this year, I'm not saying Phil's offense is bad. It is not the offense from last year.
no,
It's just
it's really not.
it is not close to it. So if I got a huge question mark on the pitching, I'm not a huge fan of the offense, although I think it's good. I would say it's one of the top 6 offenses. I just think there's just a lot missing here overall.
He definitely likes his power guys, and he's trying to complement his Hunter Renfro with CJ Abrams, which, complimenting CJ Abrams with Hunter Renfro is kind of a decent way to do it, but you're dragging down your on base percentage quite a bit there. There's some picks I like. There's some picks that I didn't. I kind of like the Alexis Diaz pick because I think that he's actually a good pitcher. I just don't know how many save opportunities he's going to get in Cincinnati. But he only needs him to get like 20 to 25 saves when you have Class A who should get 40. And that gives you 65 saves, and that should be enough. And I think that he does have the role in Cincy, so I think that's a good combo. I think Diaz is the kind of exact guy he needed to get. I think I would have just done it in the reserve draft and gotten like an Andres Munoz or an
Yep.
Alex Lang or somebody instead of having to go get Diaz and spent that $14 somewhere else, maybe on not Blake Snell. Blake Snell, I think, is fine if he can get 150 to 160 innings out of him. I think he'll like the production with it. I have questions about the rotation with Rodon already being hurt. I don't love Malley. Merrill Kelly, I don't love either. I think he was, again, kind of a flash in the pan. You're not really sure what you're going to get on any given day. He can give you 8 earned runs, or he can give you a 7 innings, 1 run, and you're not really sure what you're going to get. But for a guy that threw 200 innings last year, 177 strikeouts, not many guys can do that. And if he's going to get it with volume, then I guess that might be what he has to do. The reserve draft, I like that he got Colton Wong, but the rest of them, I mean, Walsh is going to be a platoon guy. I think Donaldson, I don't know if he's got anything left in the tank. They're looking for any reason not to have him in the lineup. That's why Volpe made the team. Dylan Carlson looks like the odd man out in the outfield for St. Louis with their
O'Neal.
prospects.
Oh yeah, yeah.
What's that?
Oh no, go ahead.
And with O'Neal and now I'm trying to blank on the prospect, whatever his fucking name is, and
Walker.
yeah, Walker, and there's one other guy that they have in the outfield. I'm trying to blank on it, but I think that Carlson's gonna be the odd man out, and then Doval. I don't know how productive he'll actually be, and he's a notorious low on base percentage guy. So yeah, sneakily some kind of questionable decisions with the offense and the pitching. I think that he didn't really round it out as well as he could have, but I don't mind some of the values. I think that Tyler Stevenson for one, I think would have been a great pickup for a guy like Peter. But great pickup for Phil. He's one of the top guys I had available. I don't really have him that much lower than Melendez and than William Contreras. And I think that Stevenson's actually going to play some DH this year, so I think he's going to get a lot more at bats playing in Cincinnati. You got to love that. Overall, I think the offense is still very good. I think it's still a top 4 offense. The pitching staff has upside when you got start Nola, Rodon, and Class A. I think those are good, but this pitching, he needs some volume out of his pitching. He still needs one more pitcher, I feel like. And I'm not sure how he's going to get it because I look at his bench and I don't really see a lot of tradable assets on this bench. So I think he's going to have a hard time. I think you guys are going to get a lot of Jared Walsh and Dylan Carlson offers here pretty soon for your pitching. So we'll kind of see how that goes. Yeah, I don't love the way he rounded it out, but I still think that he's got enough floor built up here with some of his pitching and some of his offense that he still sits number 3 in my personal power rankings.
All right, sounds good. Heck yeah. For me, I think he dropped 2 spots from the pre to post draft, which I think was one of the most that dropped. Like I said, I don't think there was a lot of movement for me overall, but I think I had him 3 pre, and I got him 5 now, I believe. So
Yeah, I had him 3 and kept him at 3, but that's because there's somebody else that moved way down my power rankings.
yeah, I'm gonna
And go
oh,
ahead.
go ahead. I'm gonna give Phil a C minus, I guess. I don't know. C minus seems about right.
I gave him. I originally wrote down B plus, but I think that after looking at it, yeah, I think I'm gonna go more like B minus. Yeah, I didn't like the way that he spent a lot of his money, but I still think that he addressed some needs and could have. I think there was a lot of guys he wanted that he got outpriced on, and never just went and got the guys that he needed to get. He could have went and got Devin Williams and first
Well,
20,
yeah.
Diaz for 14. He could,
I mean,
so
I would rather have gotten like Luis Garcia for 23 than Blake Snell for 21. I know he might have felt
I
foolish
disagree
for
on that
throwing him
one.
back in, but I 100% would have rather done that personally.
I mean, I would have rather gotten Lance Lynn for 30 over
Yeah,
Snell for 30 or 21. So yeah, I think
definitely.
I just don't think he got any of the guys he even wanted to get. I think he just kind of spent the money to spend it and got some guys that were a little questionable. Coming in at number 3, the biggest faller in my personal rankings was myself. I sucked this draft. I had talk about a guy that had the world in his hands. I had $130 to spend or something like that, and I blew it. I got priced out on the guys that I wanted. Felix Bautista, I had to have him. He was the guy that I wanted all along. I put some low bid on other closers, but it was into the draft. It was Felix Bautista was the guy I wanted. Corbin Carroll, another guy that couldn't leave the draft without. Wanted Corbin Carroll, got priced out for him. Didn't want to pay 33 for him. Didn't want to pay 27 for Felix Bautista. And then it threw me for a loop. Because I ended up leaving a ton of money on the table. I overspent for Taylor Ward at 17 because I had $34 on the table for one player, and that was the only player left that was worth a damn. So I needed offense. I didn't really get the offensive upgrades that I needed. Left the draft feeling like shit. But I woke up this morning, I looked at my roster one more time, and I'm actually okay with where I stand. I look top to bottom, and I actually kind of like the lineup. It's not a good lineup. It's not a great, certainly not a great lineup, but I actually like some of the guys. And one thing that I've said to a few people about my team is that I think my team will have more value after week 1 and week 2 than it actually does right now. Once these guys are kind of in their roles, if I go top to bottom, Melendez, he was the top catcher option available in my opinion. I think that in the Royals lineup's going to be better, and I think he's going to play a lot of outfield and a lot of DH. So I think he's going to get more at bats than catcher only than a guy like William Contreras. And so William Contreras might be the better at bat hitter than Melendez, but I think that Melendez will have more production because he'll get more at bats. Christian Walker was one of my top guys. If you look at the side by side stats of him and Matt Olson together on what their actual batted ball data is, they almost look identical. His batted ball data looked really good last year. He was one of my top targets. When Pasquantino went for 25, I feel like Christian Walker for 13 is a bargain. Andres Jimenez, Devers, Adames, those are my keepers. Overpaid for Michael Harris, but you kind of had to given my situation. Sterling Marte, the only question about him, I think, is health. I think he was hurt all last year. I don't mind it for 19. Just kind of had to have it. Lars Nootbaar is my guy. He's going to probably be my most untouchable guy this year. Really high on him. Taylor Ward, I don't mind. He's going to be hitting in that good lineup. And Lourdes Gurriel is going to be hitting cleanup for Arizona. Laureano is going to be hitting second for Oakland. And even on my bench, Tovar is going to be starting shortstop for Colorado. And Profar, I believe, will lead off for Colorado. So I don't mind the players here. I think I have guys that are in good roles that I think will produce, but this team obviously lacks the star power and it lacks the true upside. I'm gonna squeeze these oranges for as much as they can, talking about Lourdes Gurriel and his lineup context, even though he might not hit 22 home runs this year, but I'm going to try and get the most out of him. But obviously this team is a pitching first team. So still think I have the best rotation in the league. Backed it up by getting one of the top closers, Clay Holmes, who maybe he only saves 75% of the games, but I know he'll have some pretty good ratios, some pretty good strikeout numbers to go with it. And it'll be on a good Yankees team. So yeah, overall, I think there's maybe 1 or 2 trades that need to be made here. Trade away some of the pitching, get some hitting, and it might look a little bit different. But overall, I'm actually pretty happy with where I stand. So tell me about what you kind of think here.
The first 4 picks, I didn't mind. I thought you got them all for pretty good prices. Again, I think first base was deep. My thing with Christian Walker is again, I hate to say it's another one of those you got to prove it for me again, but it just kind of just seems like that for me again. I feel like why wouldn't you go get the Abreu who's done it for 7-8 years for $4 more? That's why I think he was the best first baseman available because again, I know there's age and this and that. Abreu's in a better lineup and he is a better player. He's proven it year in and year out. So I
I
think there
don't
was
know power. Abreu only had he had less than 20 home runs last year, and he's not getting any younger. He might
well, yeah,
drive in more RBIs, but Christian Walker might have
what
the
doesn't
higher
Abreu have a
home run.
higher OBP, more runs scored? I mean, Walker had a pretty good amount of runs scored
And
last
I
year, but
think that
again,
Arizona's offense is going to be much improved this year. I think there's going to
yeah.
be much more RBI and run
And
opportunities
like I
for him.
said, I don't hate it.
Corbin
Walker could
Carroll, Ketel Marte, and um, who's the other guy in that Arizona lineup? But anyway, go ahead.
I was just I mean, like I said, I don't hate it. I just think there was just so much depth that like when a Ty France goes for $1 and you could have or some of these other you drafted Seth Brown 4 times, so clearly it was maybe telling you something. But I just feel like there was so much depth there where I didn't think that was needed so quickly. But Harris for 42, I don't really think that's much of an overpay. That's about what I thought the
Yeah.
top guy was going to go for, especially when Corbin Carroll and all that go for as much as they did. But like you said, Clay Holmes might not even be the closer at the end of the year. They have a really young kid coming up that had like a .8 ERA last year and averaged like I think he had 60 Ks in 40 innings. So if Holmes struggles at all, he that job could go away fast.
Might.
Um, my what's up?
It might.
Yeah. But you said it yourself. I think you just mismanaged the funds at the end. I think you had between that the McLean $16 was part of your funds too, right? Obviously you
Yeah.
had to use
Yeah.
them all up, but we're talking $34 that was basically unused at the end, which translates to a Corbin Carroll, a
Yep.
Luis Robert,
I could have went and gotten frickin' Bryce Harper.
a Bryce Harper and Alex Bregman. So it's not, I don't necessarily think it's that you had a bad draft. I don't think you had one of the worst drafts. Like I said, when I'm looking at the 4 guys you got to fill your team or the 5, 6 guys you wanted to, it's not bad. But to, again, to sit there and say you had $35 on the table where you could have added another star on your team, that's
By the
gut
time I
wrenching.
drafted Ward, it was like 14 or 16 left. But
Right. Well, I know that's what I'm saying.
yeah.
It's hard to look back after the fact because it's going live. I get that, but at the end of the day, you did, in a sense, have $30+ available that went unspent. And my thing is, why spend 17 on Taylor Ward? Spend $1. He could be a keeper.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't have got him for that, but he was just the best player available, and I had to spend the money. So, yeah,
You don't
but I
have
should
to
have just
spend the
gone. I
money.
should have just
You
gone
don't have to.
27. I should have gone 27 on Bautista instead of getting Clay Holmes for 12. That's the gap right there. Just spend the $15 more and get Bautista and get the
Or
better
like you said
closer.
with catchers, there was a couple catchers taking the reserve draft instead of getting Melendez. The 28 that was on Melendez and Ward, like you said, could have went somewhere
Yeah,
else. But hey, you've misspent your funds
Eh,
before. You did it before, and
yeah.
you've still succeeded. So I mean, it is what it is. But maybe after 3 years, or what are we on? 20 years of doing this, maybe next year you will not misuse your
Maybe,
funds.
maybe we'll see. The thing about Melendez is it got to the point where after losing out on some of the closers and losing out on Corbin Carroll, I just like I didn't know what else to spend the money on, so I'm like, let me just go get the best catcher available, and maybe I'll get a an advantage there. So yeah, I probably would have rather just gotten a $1 Stevenson than an $11 Melendez. 100%. That's what I would love to do. You know, I'm the dollar catcher guy. But then I wouldn't have anywhere to spend that extra $10 at that point. So I'm like, might as well just get the best guy. So I fucked up. I dropped myself from number 1 in the power rankings to my own personal to number 4 with a C- draft rating because I just think I mismanaged. I fumbled the bag and I don't know if I'm going to recover from it. This offense needs some help. And I think it has depth.
Um,
Like I don't know where I can upgrade. You know, I obviously outfield I could upgrade, but I can't take on an outfielder without sending some of these guys out too. So we'll see how
yeah,
creative it can be.
and I did say OBP was something to look at beforehand, and I think for the most part that's covered. But you do have 2 or 3 guys that are under that 320,
Mhm. And
330
I
range
don't
that
have
could
my
be a little
Juan Soto
scary that,
anymore, who's kind of cleaning it all up.
or Altuve and stuff like exactly. Yeah. So no, I think it's still a good team. I would even say you still draft it. If you took off the mismanaging of funds, I think you filled out your team fine. I would give overall a C because of the mismanaged funds, but I don't think it was by any means one of the worst drafts. I just think, like you said, it's probably one of those I wish I could have drafts.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, shoulda, coulda, woulda. Could have been a lot better. Our consensus number 2. This, my opinion on this team is going to surprise some people. Which is actually going to be number 2, Crim's Crew, making the leap from me all the way down. I had him down at number 6. He is my number 1 team in my power rankings. Now, during the draft, I didn't really think that much of this team until I just kind of looked at it on paper and I just kind of go up and down the line. I'm like, okay, offense, looks kind of good. Oh, Ty France, utility, Elvis Andrews, okay, Rojas, Miranda, Yoshida, kind of decent. Okay, well, I'm sure the pitching staff probably isn't that good. Oh, actually, he's got Manoa and Verlander and the 2 closers, Hader and Presley,
I've
and
been trying to tell you this for a
I
month.
like I like Lindolo and Singer. I'm not crazy about, but I just look at like this team just kind of has everything. It's got power, it's got speed, and the pitching staff looks pretty good. And it's got some depth to it, and he kind of drafted some usable players, and he might be able to turn Jordan Lawler into a significant piece. Jordan Lawler for Jose Altuve in 2 months. That might be a trade that happens. He can upgrade from Josh Rojas to Altuve. It might be a trade that might be on the table a month from now. So I think he did a good job of getting pieces that can help him now, some pieces that can help him later. And I think this is the most balanced team that has a little bit of everything. So I kind of like what Kermy did. He gets an A from me.
Real quick, you ready for this one?
Yeah.
Robert, Schwarber, or Ramirez, or Witt, Betts, and Trout.
Uh, What that's Trout.
Okay, so his Crim's offense is not better than mine, but thank you. Um, because
Okay, sure. If you're just gonna, all right, whatever.
that's literally his three best hitters matched up with my three best hitters, and I have three more dudes in the top 100, and he doesn't. Like,
Okay,
how
Mr.
could you
Top.
say Crim's
Okay,
offense
Mr.
was
Top
better than mine?
100, man.
But you're saying that's an arbitrary number. That's where they're drafted, as if there's no auction. That's literally where they're
Okay.
drafted.
Okay.
So I don't know how it's an arbitrary number. That's literally, if you take money out of it, if you just look at it as a straight draft, they're saying that that player would go in that spot, right? So
Okay,
how
that's
is it
fine.
how can you not look at it?
That's fine.
That's why how does Crim I love Crim's team. I'm gonna allude to a lot of what you said, but when you said Crim's offense was better than mine, his pitching's amazing. But to sit there and say Crim's offense is better than mine, I think again, I'd like to know what you're smoking. Um, but overall, Crim's draft, I liked some of the moves he made, but I think he messed up a lot. I like the two moves I like were Ty France for $1. I think was great. Again, loaded first base class. Don't know why people spent so much on it. Ty France for $1, and I think the other one he did good on, I think, was Luis Robert for 30. I think that was a good price for him. I think he did he get him back cheaper than what he was thrown in for? 32 was I can't remember. But I like Robert for 30, but again, he's an injury concern. So that's tough because he can bring it, but that's a big thing there. I think he just messed up a lot of other areas. I don't love Singer for 10. I think the Miranda one for $5 again was weird. Again, you can look
Singer
back
for
on the
10 doesn't
fact
make sense when Cobb went for 1 and Tyler Anderson went for 3 or whatever that was.
exactly. And when you're looking at, and again, it happened later in the draft, so he couldn't have predicted that. But when you spend five on Miranda, who, by the way, I don't know why five was even spent on Miranda. When you look at his numbers last year, he had 45 runs in 125 games. He hit 15 home runs, so he projects for what, 20?
Yeah.
He projects. I mean, I don't know. It was just weird. Tyler O'Neill could be a bounce back. I'm sure that's what he's looking for. But if I would have saved the 13 from O'Neill, Krim's team was good going in. We both agreed with that, right?
Yeah.
So I don't think Krim needed to fill it out with like a bunch of value guys. I would have loved for Krim to spend 30 on Robert and to spend a 30 on Bregman. I would have loved for Krim to have spent a 30 on Robert and I don't know, just
If he
another
was,
superstar.
if he knew he was going to get Ty France for 1 and Elvis Andrews for 4, and if he was going to get those values, I'm sure he would probably agree with you.
But it's just one of those things where how does Tyler O'Neill end up being like the first guy that comes off the board at 13 when he was just awful last year? I mean, he was just bad. Jose, again, Brady Singer for 10, Martin. I'm looking at this team. I'm seeing one, Ty France, Robert two, as guys that I think will actually contribute in a positive way to his team this year. The rest of those guys are just huge what if question marks.
Could be. I like the upside of some of them. I think I like the floor of Ty France, and I like what Elvis Andrews. If he just got to do what he did last year, it's some weird home run upside and offensive upside for Elvis Andrews. I didn't expect it towards the end of last year, where he had 9 home runs and less than 200 at bats. So I mean, if he can be a 18, 19 home run guy, I mean, he's gonna probably put up Dansby Swanson level production if he just does anything near what he did last year. So we'll kind of see what that kind of looks like. Yeah,
But
I don't know. You
my
kind
thing
of have
is,
some points here. Maybe he doesn't get an A draft grade because of some of the overpriced guys in O'Neill for 13 and Singer for 10 that he got at some not so great values, but I do like some of the other values he got. What were you about to say?
I was just going to say he came into the draft obviously having made the trades he made. We knew his rotation was going to be like you said, Manoah, Presley, Verlander, Hader, Ladol. Like it's solid. Like he went into the draft knowing he didn't need pitching and he
Mhm.
needed to go and get offense because it was Schwarber, it was Ramirez, and that was pretty much it, right? So he goes in and spends $30 on a guy that literally has not been healthy his whole entire career. So
Yeah.
you're replacing, you're trying to get this, and he needed power. Would you consider Robert a power bat? I don't think so. I would honestly look at his team right now and say Schwarber and Ramirez are the only guys that are going to hit 30 home runs on his team. And again, I don't know if there's another guy, I mean, seriously, that hits 20.
Ah,
I mean, really, I mean, France is going to be right around there, but he's not a power hitting first baseman.
yeah.
Miranda's not, I mean, Wilson Contreras, what does he hit? Just about 20 home
Yeah.
runs. He might even hit a little less. So you can argue maybe Wilson. He has two guys that are going to hit 30 home runs, Ramirez and Schwarber, and then not a single dude that might hit 20. Robert, if he stays healthy, sure, but that's been literally a huge if in his career. So
I think you might be onto something.
and that's kind of what I'm at right now. Like I like Krim's team. I liked it heading into the draft. I really did. But it's one of those things where I think he needed to address power. And I think he needed to address just get me two superstar bats. And I think his team would have been, I would have loved his team a lot more. And he got a
I think
superstar bat.
he actually needed the Hunter Renfroe more than he needed the Tyler O'Neill.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
He needed power. He needed power bats, and he went out and got Luis Robert, who's made of glass.
yeah. But
And
that's
and
kind
that's
of
what I'm
what's available outfield wise. It was those kind of, speed guys, the 20 home run, 30 steal guys, not the power guys. But, maybe a guy like Bellinger would have been a better fit, on this team. But we'll see.
You are
Yeah.
right. There wasn't a ton of power guys, but would you not even feel safer? And again, I know it's hard to say based on where it was in the draft, but would you not feel safer taking Mullins at 31 than Robert at 30 at this point? It's a
Um,
toss up. I
I
know.
like
No.
Robert better just because I think Robert has more offensive upside. I think
Agreed. Yep.
we've seen, yeah, he hasn't his career high in home runs is actually 13, which is way less than you'd expect it to be, but his career high in at bats is 380. But I think he's a better offensive player. He just hasn't been on the field to
How,
prove it yet. Where I think
how about
Mullins has already peaked as a player, which is so weird to say for players so young, but I think he's doesn't hit lefties so bad, and he got moved down in the lineup late last year that I wonder if he's already starting to kind of tail off. He was more of a flash in the pan kind of guy.
and I will say this, I do agree with and I will say, I kind of the same question here. Robert, I think, is higher ceiling than Bregman, but again, where Krim's team was at, the fact that it was already good, I would feel safer spending that 30 on Bregman and getting that power all-star middle of the order bat than, I mean, who knows where Robert is in 2 months? Who knows where O'Neill is in 2 months? My thing with Krim's draft is I just see a lot of, again, I see maybe, I think France contributes. I think Robert, if he's healthy, contributes. The rest of those guys are, like I said, are just huge, huge question marks.
All right, so that leaves our number one team to be, to nobody's surprise, Peter. Now, we kind of talked about Peter. I know I talked about him a little bit earlier, where that's why I thought that Jordan kind of passed him up, was because I think that Peter obviously had the best team going into the draft, and I think he kind of fumbled the bag a little bit into there with lowering his floor so much with kind of some injury guys, some guys that just haven't really produced. And I don't really need to go on other than to just kind of reiterate what I said before, where like his depth is absent, and the guys that he filled the rest of his roster out with were not guys that you would draft if you were projected to win the league, to be the number one power ranking guy. Yeah, I wouldn't have drafted the guys that he drafted. So what do you let me see. I gave him a D actually for his draft grade. What do you give him for a draft grade, and what do you think he needed to do better, or what he did well?
I'll say F.
Oh,
And the reason I'm saying that is because I know you asked in the beginning, like, who had the worst draft. And again, I'm kind of looking at that, like, who had an opportunity with the money they had, who spent their money wrong. Peter had $16, right? So there wasn't a whole lot he could do there. Here's
it's
my
really
thing with
hard to screw up $16, but congratulations.
it is. And my thing is there's only really one thing you can look at out of who he auctioned, literally, is does Liam Hendricks and Ottavino become closers? Because then that's where we look at in 3 months from now. If Hendricks is healthy, if Ottavino, does he step into that Diaz role as the Mets closer? Who knows? So I'm saying F now. Again, who knows what happens, but it's one of those things where if those guys aren't closers, if Hendricks isn't healthy, if Ottavino isn't the guy, seriously, tell me a guy on that was bid on that makes any difference.
Yeah, and that's kind of the thing too. I mean, Meneses, if he hits another 20 home runs per however many at bats he had 400 at bats last year. Kind of got
There's upside there. No
or
doubt.
no,
He's third.
he hit 13 home runs and 222 at bats. So
And I'm
yeah.
not saying guys can't come out of nowhere, but he's not a rookie. The guy's 30.
Oh, is he really? Yeah. So yeah, no. So definitely some kind of question marks there. I'm kind of with you on it. So yeah, I think that he had the Titanic, and he sailed it right into an iceberg. But I think it's going a little too far, because I don't think he sunk the team, but he did really lower the floor.
Yeah, he did, but it's funny because it's so many. We always get Peter or Bryce for doing his trades and his. There's a lot of deja vu in this league, and it's funny because what have we said about Peter's team the last 2 years? I love the lineup, I love the rotation,
Yeah.
but damn, Peter, do you not have anyone on your bench that can come on and do anything?
These guys
And
just
that's
have personalities.
I know, and that's literally been his MO the last 2 years. We said the exact same thing last year. We said, Peter, we love your team, but if one injury or one thing happens, you literally have not a single dude on your roster that can replace those guys. So
Yeah.
if Peter has a clean bill of health year, he wins the league. If Peter somehow has 2 or 3 injuries, he turns into the Chris of last year. Where I'm
Yeah.
not even saying Chris had injuries, but Chris just went from we loved him, great team, blah blah, and then just falls off. So
Yeah.
Peter's, I don't want to say lucky. He built this team, so by no means is he lucky, but his team came in so goddamn loaded that there was no way. I don't think there was any way possible that he would have gotten the number 1 spot taken away from
Mhm. Yeah, but it happened for me.
him.
And even with the bad of a draft that I had, I mean, after kind of talking it out, I don't think I'm that far behind this team either. I mean, he's
Oh, you're
got the
not.
most star power in the offense, but I don't think that I'm too far behind. And we'll kind of see how it
Oh,
all comes out.
if we compare his offense to Phil's last year, what can I mean? We're looking at he's got 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. He's got 7 dudes. I think I'm counting quick. 7 dudes in his lineup that are projected for 80 or more runs. He's
Mhm.
got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, about 6 guys that are projected for 25 home runs or more. And if I look at 85 RBIs or more, I don't know what you can consider RBI as like a category contributor, but 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 guys that do that, and we know the steals are there. 24 projected, 24. What category does he not offensively probably finish in the top 3 in, right? I mean, he's going to very much look like Phil's team last year of nearly every category offensively being, I would say, 11 points or higher in Roto.
Yeah,
And then when you look at the staff, which we really haven't even talked about yet, again, I don't see a situation where he's not at least 10 or points or higher on almost every category in pitching outside of saves.
yeah.
So his
Saves could.
team's
I mean, there's the obvious ceiling is there because Ottavino could be the closer right now, and Hendricks could be the closer in a month for all we know. And he's get Hendricks for the best closer in baseball or second best closer in baseball,
oh,
for for $1 for the next 3 years, and he's back to his ruling of Roto and all that. But he also has never won first place in Roto and never won the league either. So
and
kind of a disappointing year for him last year, and we'll kind of see if this is maybe the year for him.
and a little bit of that, if you remember, I mean, we saw it first. I think, well, did we do this? We did a show in like June or July last year where we literally said, Peter, your team is good, but a move needs to be made, or else it's just going to keep like dwindling. Like we literally saw it before our eyes happening. Like it's going to keep dwindling. Your
Yep.
team's nasty, but you got to make a move. You got to make a move. The move wasn't made, or maybe it was even made too late. I do think he did one last desperation one like a week before the deadline, if I remember. But we'll see what Peter does. He's got it on paper, but we've seen that before.
Yep. All right, and that concludes our power rankings. I'll go back through my personal power rankings. I had Krim at 1, then Peter, Phil, myself, Chad, Justin, Jay, Eric, Tyler, Dex, Chris, Dave, Jordan, and Bryce. And Eric, what were your personal power rankings? What we gave you was consensus.
I had Bryce at 14. I had Dave at 13. I had New Jordan, if I'm getting the name right, at 12. Justin at 11. Chris at 10. Dex 9. Tyler 8. Jay 7. Chad 6. Phil 5. Myself 4. Krim 3. Kyle 2. And Peter 1. And real quick, the interesting thing is you yourself thought you had a bad draft. You were higher on Krim than I was. I didn't like my draft a ton. You didn't like my draft a ton. We both didn't like Phil's draft a ton. It's kind of funny that the top, like you said at the beginning of the show, kind of rounding it around in a circle, that really the top 4 or 5 teams didn't do much to keep separating the pack. It's almost as if they stayed very stagnant and
Yeah,
not many. We weren't really fans of the draft.
correct. And so yeah, I mean, it should be another fun, interesting year. The division draft happened. I not happy with it. I know you're not happy
Oh
with it
man.
either because we are in the loaded division, and the other is the fucking cakewalk division. I should just rename them the cakewalk and the freaking juggernauts or something like that. But yeah, we have the two divisions
I mean,
there. But
I said it off the top of my head, but is it true? Like I just said it, like just looking real quick at the division. Is it true that Jay really is the only person that has actually had like a top 5 or 6 finish in the league based on that? I know Justin made the playoffs that one year, so I don't really know like head to head wise. Maybe more of a roto perspective, but Jay's really the only one that has had like great success in the league in that division, I think.
yeah, so
So
let's see.
yeah, it
So
was very
here's the
interesting.
standings from last year. Let me pull up what the divisions are. Um, So divisions are in Jay's division is Jay, Bryce, Dave, Dex, Justin, Tyler, and Krim. So Krim and
Yeah.
Jay are the ones that have made any noise in the league in the 2 or 3 years, really. Well, Justin made the championship in one league as squeaking in as the 6th seed, but Other than
And one
that,
of the years, and one of the years, obviously, Krim obviously like folded the first year 3 months in, so he's had like one really bad year, one decently competitive year. So I don't know what happened in that draft where we got Peter, you, Chad with his super improved team, Phil, who's I mean even Chris's team, he's had huge success in this league.
yeah,
So I don't know how that happened, but it did.
not great. Any closing remarks?
I'm excited to get going. Obviously, the season starts Thursday. I'm ready to get rolling on it. I'm curious to see how it all pans out. I'm also really curious to see what trades might happen between now and then because again, now that salaries, I hate to keep saying that. I'm not saying they don't have any value, but a lot of those C guys now, like I said, in my perspective, Trout, Mookie, guys like that, their salary really doesn't mean anything. They're C contracts, they can't be kept. I'm really curious to see how a lot of these star C players get moved around in the league over the first couple months because I think there's going to be a lot more movement this year than maybe even ever.
Yeah, I would have to agree. Jordan, you want to tell everyone to fuck off one more time? Guess not. Well, I guess.
No,
Real
I
quick,
just
hold
want
on.
to
Before
say
oh, sorry.
you guys can go fuck yourselves. Everybody else
Okay.
is cool with me.
Oh, okay.
Since we're not going to do one of these before the season starts, Kyle, give me your official record prediction on the Cubs.
Oh, I think the Cubs are going to hit the over this year. I like the team right now. I like the way it looks. The morale is high with me. I don't know what their actual record's going to look like though, but I'm going to say 82-80.
Okay, that's about what I had. I was going to say 80 and 82. Yeah.
Yeah, I
I,
think they're going to be solid. I think they're going to be a good team, but they're not going to be great at anything. The pitching is a question mark. If their pitching makes leaps, then I like what they will be able to do offensively. As a whole, they're okay, but individually, obviously, don't have the star. So I like the player. Like I like Mancini. I've always liked Mancini. I like Horner. I like Swanson. I Cody Bellinger. If you can get something out of him, I mean, I like him, but individually not great, but we're going to be a team where the whole is better than the sum of the parts, and it's not what I envisioned when I think of Chicago Cubs baseball and the team that's top three and fucking revenue in the league. But I guess
right.
that's what it's going to have to be.
Damn Ricketts, right? Do the White Sox make the playoffs? Yes or no?
Yes, I think that they're actually the best team in that division. It's just health and better management this year.
All right. All right.
All right,
Interesting
well,
stuff.
that does it for us. I'm gonna go eat some dinner. Phil got here, but he declined an appearance on the podcast, so he did not want to up his celebrity status. So for Eric, I'm Kyle. Thank you guys for joining us, and until next time.
Heck yeah.